construction worker David Falk is suing the mother of his child, homemaker Tammy Williams, and her husband Steve for attorney fees due to a restraining order. The Williams are countersuing, claiming David filed false charges with Child Protective Services.
This is case number 219 on the calendar in the matter of Falk versus Williams.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Judge. Parties have been sworn in. You may be seated. Folks, have a seat, please.
Mr. Falk, you and Mrs. Williams had a relationship for a brief period of time, I understand from your papers, while her husband was incarcerated.
Yes, ma'am.
And as a result of that relationship, you have a child, a son.
Yes, ma'am.
Her husband was released from prison, and it is your claim that after you made attempts to see your son, they filed false charges of stalking and harassment against you. You want the costs that you incurred as a result of those proceedings. Mr. and Mrs. Williams say that everything that they said in those petitions were true, that you were annoying, harassing, stalking them, that the reason the case was dismissed was because for some legitimate reason they couldn't make it to the hearing. But everything that they said was true. And they are counterclaiming because they say that you called Child Protective Services and made allegations against them as parents of your son.
Yes.
Okay. When did you go to jail, Mr. Williams?
April of 2002.
And how long had you and Mrs. Williams been married up until that point?
We've been married since 1997.
You have children?
Yes, ma'am.
How many children do you have?
3 children together.
When did you start to see Mr. Falk?
Possibly about 2 years ago.
Give me the month and year. Don't ask him, he was in jail.
I was in jail.
Do you know Mr. Falk?
I think it was around September, somewhere in there.
September of 2002?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When was your son born, Mr. Falk?
October 9th, 2003.
Now, when were you released from jail, Mr. Williams?
June the 1st of this year, 2004.
Did you know about this new baby that came into the family?
Yes, ma'am.
When did you find out about this new baby?
I had actually found out while she was pregnant. She did write me and tell me about the relationship between her and Mr. Falk. That is when we started reconciling. We had been separated for a little while I was in prison.
You mean you were separated before you went to prison?
No. When I went to prison, she split up with me because I went back to prison because she told me if I went to prison, she couldn't handle the situation.
How many times have you been to prison, sir?
I've been to prison twice. This was a probation violation, what I went back for.
What were you violated for?
Not paying monies, and I couldn't pay the restitutions on the case.
Not paying restitution? You were violated for not making restitution in what kind of case, sir?
Obtaining property by false pretense, checks, worthless and bad checks.
So how many times were you arrested for writing bad checks?
Several times. I went through a period, I wrote the checks over a period of time.
Over a period of what time?
1998, 1997.
2 years?
Yes, ma'am.
So this wasn't a one-shot deal where you wrote a couple of bad checks and you were arrested?
They were wrote over a few months period, but over 2 years I kept, as they come in and
so
would go
they
to
were
court.
written over a period of time?
Yes, ma'am.
And you cashed them over a period of time?
Yes, ma'am.
As I said, this was not a one-shot deal?
No, ma'am.
All right.
You're correct.
So that's what your wife... You always get there.
Yeah.
So that's what your wife is saying. She said to you, if you get arrested again, we're finished.
Yes, ma'am.
Sounds right to me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, after your husband was released from jail, you decided to reconcile. Is that right, Miss Williams?
Yes.
That was in June, so that your baby was 8 months old.
Yes, ma'am.
And what did you do?
I accepted my husband for him to come into the home. We worked it out, and everything's...
And what did you do about Mr. Falk and his wanting to see his son?
Mr. Falk has never called. He's only made harassing phone calls or drive by the house.
When did he ask to see his son?
He never has, Your Honor.
Was he present when the child was born?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, there we go. That's a one thing. So when the child was born, he was there.
Yes, Your Honor.
And where did you go after you left the hospital when the child was born?
I think I went to his house.
So you lived with him for a period of time with the child?
He lived with me in my house. We just...
Fine. He lived with you for a period of time after the child was born?
After the child was born, I don't think he was.
Did you ever spend the night with her after your son was born?
Yeah, I did, because we went down to my mother's house for Thanksgiving and spent the night down there. So we did.
That was in November of 2003, when the baby was just about a month old.
Yes,
you remember that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So I would assume that for a period of time before your husband got out of jail, there was regular communication between the two of you. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
There we go. That's what I'm trying to get at. Before your husband got out of jail, there was regular communication with Mr. Falk. He was there when the baby was born, took you home from the hospital, you went to visit his mother Thanksgiving time, you went with the baby. Did you take your other children with you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Well, so what happened? Why did you stop allowing him regular contact with his son?
I felt that it was nice for him to see his son, just being a nice mother.
Why did you stop him from seeing his son?
I don't know.
Well, did that coincide with the time when your husband was released from prison?
It wasn't around that time. He was still in prison.
Why did you stop him from seeing his son?
Because I had got this ex parte violence protective order.
Let me see it. That doesn't answer my question, Miss Williams.
Can you
There
repeat?
was a period of time when everything was okay and he was seeing his son and you were visiting his mother and you were traveling as a family practically. Now, something happened when you decided not to let him see his son.
Because he was calling me, making threatening calls.
Something happened before that. You're down visiting his mother in November for Thanksgiving. Christmas. What happened?
I just wanted to end the relationship.
That's right. You wanted to end the relationship. And did you tell him that?
Not in so many words, Your Honor.
What words did you use, Mrs. Williams?
I was mostly avoiding him.
Right. And when you were mostly avoiding him, that means he couldn't see his son. Right? Because you had the child in your custody.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you getting where I'm going?
Yes, Your Honor.
She wanted to end the relationship. She didn't tell him she wanted to end the relationship. She just started to avoid him.
She's leaving half the stuff out. She's
Listen
so
to
scared.
me.
Yes, ma'am.
I've been around longer than you've
I
been
know.
born. We understand each other.
Yes,
This is
ma'am.
not a new story, just
ma'am.
new faces on the story.
Yes, ma'am.
She wanted to end it because you and she, according to you, were coming together.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote you about the baby. You decided to reconcile. She had to break it off. She didn't want to make any trouble by telling him she wanted to break it off, so she just didn't take his phone calls, which means he couldn't see his child. So he started calling her on the telephone. You don't have to be a genius to figure that out, Mr. Williams. That's what happened.
Yes,
so then she goes and files this protective order, and she says, he's harassing me. He's driving by my house. He's leaving threatening messages. Well, what did you expect him to do if you wouldn't let him see his child? Did you expect him to go away?
No, Your Honor.
Well, what did you expect him to do? Now, when your husband got out of prison, your husband put his name on the baby's birth certificate. Is that right, Mr. Williams?
Yes.
And you did that knowing that you were not this child's father, and you did that for the explicit purpose of seeing to it that Mr. Falk did not see his son and was not... Oh. Well, what other reason could there have been... What other reason could there have been, Mr. Williams, for you, knowing that you were not the child's father, to put your name on the child's birth certificate instead of the child's father's name?
He never accepted from day one while he was at the hospital to be allowed on the birth certificate. He refused to be put on the birth certificate.
I want to explain something to you, Mr. Williams.
and I
That is a
offer-
lie.
No.
Because as long as she's married to somebody else, he is not permitted by law to put his name on the birth certificate unless he is adjudicated by a court as the father of the child. I'm 10 steps ahead of you, sir.
Okay.
He took the child home from the hospital. He was there when the child was born. A month later, he went to visit his mother with your wife and your 3 children for Thanksgiving. A month after that, he went to his mother's home for Christmas with your 3 children and the child. And then your wife decides to go back with you. She avoids his telephone calls. He gets miserable and frustrated. You get out of prison, you say, we're going to resolve this once and for all. I'm going to put my name on the child's birth certificate. That's going to cut him off.
No.
Well, it didn't cut him off.
May I respond to that, please?
Yeah, you sure may.
He is trying to disrupt us and split us up because he wants Tammy back. I don't have any problem
He doesn't
with
want her
being
back.
father.
Trust me. He doesn't want her back. His mother doesn't want her back. Your wife fooled around while you were in jail.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I make a comment on that, please?
Sure.
I was in church. I was vulnerably hurt. He took advantage of that situation.
Madam, you were married and had 3 children. Nobody took advantage of you. Nobody forced you. Nobody tied you to a bed. You got it? Take responsibility for your own actions. You have to behave in an orderly fashion, which is, if you have a relationship with somebody and you make a baby with them, you don't decide like this, that I'm going to cut them off, which is what you did, without an explanation, without a sit down, without a discussion. Say, listen, we have to end this relationship because I'm going to go back to my husband. That doesn't mean that I'm going to take the baby away from you. Let's go to court. You'll be declared the father of the baby. We'll set up a visitation schedule. You'll be able to visit with him when you like. Instead, you decide just not to answer your phone. That's what you told me. And then when he gets annoyed and starts making harassing phone calls, you go to court and you get an ex parte protective order against him. And then when it's set for trial, you don't show up. And it's dismissed. Those are the costs he wants.
Excuse me.
She didn't show up. Now, you say she had a really good reason for not showing up. Show me a doctor's record that she was in a hospital.
Actually, we were in Superior Court in another county.
For what?
A 4-year-old check that they're trying to bring up now that I've paid off.
That didn't stop her from going to court, sir.
She was the witness in my case.
Did you notify the court?
Yes, we did.
Show me where you notified the court before.
I didn't know I needed it today.
Well, where'd you think you were coming to, a tea dance?
Judge Judy continues in a moment. And later today, David Falk says the mother of his child, Tammy Williams, falsely accused him of stalking and harassment. David also claims Tammy and her husband won't let him see his son.
What were your costs with regard to defending this action for a protective order?
$3,800. I had to hire a lawyer.
Let me see the lawyer's bill. Did you pay this bill?
I paid $1,800 so far.
Mr. Falk, what arrangements are you trying to make legally to get to visit with this child?
Try to get complete custody of him. I've got that filed now.
Did they order blood tests?
We're in the process of getting that done now, too. It's got to be a court order because she refuses to give DNA.
No.
No what?
We were actually told by our attorneys that he was wanting to drop this now because I'm willing to take responsibility for the child and be the child's father.
That right, sir?
No, ma'am. It's still
That come from his attorney,
August the 22nd.
So what you're telling me now, Mrs. Williams, listen to me very carefully, is if the court wants you to go for a blood test, you are consenting to go for a DNA test with this baby.
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. Do you understand? Now, as part of this proceeding, there is a counterclaim. The counterclaim suggests, Mr. Falk, that you called Child Protective Services on them. Show me.
We did have the letter, and we cannot find that cleared her.
I just want, listen to me. I just want proof that he called Child Protective Services and it was false.
That's the one thing we did not have. Sorry.
Well, Mr. Williams, I can't help you, sir.
I know.
Okay. You owe him $3,500, which is what he paid for his lawyer for this bogus case that you filed against him, Miss Williams. Listen to me very carefully. You made a mistake. You had an affair while your husband was away. He's the father of this child, according to you. He wants to see this child. He wants to be part of this child's life. Now, that may be inconvenient for you because you are now reconciled with your husband. That doesn't mean you can cut him off. If he chooses not to be a good father, if he chooses not to support the child once he has an order of visitation, and if he chooses to abandon this child, then you can cut him off. But you can't decide to do that on your own. Do I make myself clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $3,500. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
She's made frivolous things that I am abusive to my wife and children.
She had told everybody at church her husband was abusive towards her and the kids.
He shot his ex-wife.
She was the one chasing after me.
Because he's beat her, she's scared to say anything.
She told me she wasn't going to go back to her husband, and, you know, he was so mean.
I can't take my children to shopping in the same county we live in.
The Lord will take care of it, and he did. The Lord brought it out right here.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Lombardo versus Rao. Step forward, please.
21-year-old waitress Elizabeth Lombardo is suing her ex-boyfriend, 22-year-old construction worker Bo Rao, for several loans she made throughout their relationship. Bo says Elizabeth is holding his belongings hostage.
Miss Lombardo, this gentleman used to be your boyfriend, and you lived together for a period of time. According to you, when you separated, he owed you some money.
Yes.
Mr. Rao says he doesn't owe you any money. Relationships are a give-and-take thing. So get over it and move on with it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
When did you live together, Miss Lombardo?
We lived together from May probably to August of 2004. We started in May 2003.
Is that about right?
That's about right.
And did you move into an apartment together, or did you...
No, we moved in with my family.
That's wrong, Your Honor. Prior to that, we were living at my apartment with my brother, and she was staying over there. Then we moved.
When was that, sir?
That was April and May. We stayed in the apartment, then moved there.
I still had a room in my house. It
I
wasn't.
don't care whether you still had a room in your house. Were you living with Mr. Rao and his brother for April and May?
Yes.
And then the two of you moved into her family's house?
Yes, ma'am.
Where you had a room?
Yes.
Fine. So what does he owe you money for?
Throughout the course of our relationship, the defendant didn't have a job, so I helped support him.
Okay.
From a dental bill, his car windshield was smashed. Dentist, car
you said
payments,
dentist
municipal
twice.
court payments.
Your Honor, I had a job.
So you gave him money?
Yes.
And?
We had a verbal agreement when we were going out that he would pay it back.
Well, tell me about the verbal agreement that he would pay it back.
Just throughout the court, like he would pay me money when he had money, and like when he didn't have a job, I was always forking out money for him.
How often? 5 times, 10 times, 20 times?
It was constant.
And he always said to you, you know, you have $20, I'll pay you back. You have $50, I'll pay you back.
Yeah.
Right? Go ahead.
Then when we separated, we decided he was going to make payments of $40 a week, in which he never continued to do. I received one payment of
Just a minute.
$50.
Well, how did you come up with the amount that he owed you?
We kept it in mind at all times.
Did you?
No, Your Honor, when we were going out, we weren't keeping...
When you moved out, did you agree to pay her a sum of money?
Oh, no, Your Honor.
You did not?
No, Your Honor.
When you separated, did you sit down and write up something?
Yes.
Let me see it. Did you sign this IOU?
No, Your Honor. And for us to sign each other's name on something was pretty common. I could show you receipts with my signing for her debit card, or her signing for my debit card. It was nothing.
You didn't sign this?
No, Your Honor.
Right. Tell me the circumstances surrounding your separation, Mr. Rao.
The relationship just got ridiculous. She was constantly lying. Everything that would come up would be a lie about something. I couldn't live at her house anymore. And I actually left for the weekend after a fight, and when I came back, all my stuff was at my parents' house, and she said I had to be out.
So she moved your stuff out?
She moved it with no notice of anything. So
Okay.
then she wanted me out.
I'm ready to hear the rest. 30 seconds or less, Ms. Lombardo.
When he moved out, when he wanted his bed, his stuff was there, that's when well, you don't believe that he signed the paper.
Well, just a minute. So is what you're telling me, you told me he couldn't take his things unless he signed the paper? Mm-hmm. Then even if he signed it, it's worthless.
He had this agreement with me.
Let me explain something to you. He didn't. What you're saying is that during the course of your year and some months relationship, if you gave him $20, if you gave him $50, whatever it was, he said to you, when I get it, I'll pay you back. And that's what people do when they live together and they're not married. Don't worry, honey, I'll pay you back. That's not a loan. When two people play house and not commit to a relationship as we know it and get married, courts aren't interested in going over $20 here, $5 here, $15 there, $100 for the dentist, $12 for this. Courts aren't interested in doing that. We got other things to do. Mm-hmm. So it's been my suggestion, if you watch carefully, if I've always said, keep your finances separate. Mm-hmm. So I think you have to put a real period and say, it's over.
I'm fine.
How old are you?
21.
21? Perfect. You didn't waste a lot of your time. You didn't waste the best years. You didn't waste the flowing years. Who is this, by the way?
This is my girlfriend, Your Honor.
She have anything to contribute to this case other than, you know, looking nice?
No, just
she decided to come with you to
she's
irritate her.
seen the craziness.
To irritate her.
Yeah.
Well, probably not the best idea to bring her. Who is this?
This is my friend.
So he brought a girlfriend, you brought a friend. Move on. He did. You should. Have a happy life. Case dismissed. That's all.
Parties are excused and they step out.
Just pathetic that he has to lie that I didn't lend him money, that I supported him, and that he didn't sign the paper when he did sign the paper.
She makes up fake things. She lied. The whole relationship was basically a joke.
You trust someone and you can't.
It was out of trust and love because she's a nice person, and that's what happens when you're nice to people and trust them.
She just needs to get over it because he doesn't want her anymore.
He's a scumbag.
It's over, man. It's over. It's all over.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Burrell versus Bruce. Step forward, please.
Business owner Gary Burrell is suing his former tenant, security officer April Bruce, for breaking a lease. April says she and Gary were having an affair, and when she broke it off, he kicked her out.
Mr. Burrell, you have a rental property?
Yes.
How large is this house?
3-bedroom, upstairs, downstairs.
And when did Miss Bruce lease the house? Questions are going to get harder, Mr. Burrell.
I'm sorry. April 1st, 2004.
And what was the term of the lease?
12 months at $650 a month.
When did she move out?
October 18th, 5.5 months into the lease.
And you are suing her for the remainder of the lease?
Yes.
Prior to April 1st, 2004, had the house been rented?
No.
Why not?
I was living in it.
There came a time after Miss Bruce moved in that you began to have a social relationship with her. Is that right?
Yes.
When was that?
3 months after she moved in, 3 to 4 months after she moved in.
Did you ever spend the night there?
Once or twice, maybe about 4 times, yeah.
Once or twice, 4 times?
About 4 times.
Do you know, Mr. Burrell, it's not a really good idea to mix business and pleasure?
Yes, I do know that now.
Now, Miss Bruce says that she moved out because you got weird on her. Is that right?
That's true.
How did he get weird on you, and when did he start to get weird on you, Miss Bruce?
2 months into me living there. He started coming over every day, using his master key to get into the house.
Why did you use your master key to get into the house?
I don't ever remember doing that.
Well, the fact that you don't remember doing it doesn't mean that you didn't do it.
I never done that.
And then it's just like he never went up. It's like he was just there all the time.
You mean just hanging around?
Just hanging around.
Well, but evidently you didn't mind that because you had an intimate relationship with him.
Yes, I did. Yes, we had a relationship, but I did mind the fact that he was there all the time. And I also brought it to his attention that I didn't like the idea that he was there all the time.
Why did you move out?
The boiling point of the day I moved out was he was there, and he had someone come over. And
what do you mean he had someone come over? I'm not following.
Okay, he told me that was one of his lady friends. When I heard the car pull up, I didn't know who it was, and he came and told me it was one of his lady friends. And then he told me to stay in the room, not to come out the room, because him and his lady friend would be downstairs, and for me not to come and bother them. I just...
Downstairs in your house?
Yes. He was just trying to intimidate me, provoking me, really. That's how I feel about it.
Provoking you to do what?
Provoking me to have a scene with him, to show my furiation. I mean, you know, if you seeing someone and they bring another woman over to your house, I mean, what you gonna do? You're gonna be furious.
What's that all about, Mr. Burrell?
I don't know what she's talking about, Your Honor. The reason I came over that day was because she had wrote me out a bad check for the electric bill right here. That's why I was there.
Can I see it, please?
She got intimidated thinking that my niece was going to be a new person to come in and move because she wasn't paying the bills properly, and I was calling her. And there's a $100 bounce check.
So the reason that you came over that day is because it's a bad check.
Exactly.
All right, that sounds more palatable than what
you said.
rather than infuriating, which is a word that I'm going to have to go look up after we're finished.
Your Honor, that's not a bad check I've written him. I placed a stopment on that check.
Okay.
After I had to move out of the house, relocate, live with family member to family member, I put a stopment on that check. I felt like he should have went and lived where he was living at and respected my wishes.
Well, I didn't hear anything about wishes.
I know, but why was he coming over? Why was he taking over the property?
Because you were living, you were hanging out together, you were sleeping together, you were in a relationship together, he was hanging out in your house. That's why he was there all the time.
but I couldn't even make my own decisions in the house. I mean, he was coming over there. I don't want this in my house.
Okay.
I don't want this
Listen,
in my house.
Mr. Burrell, what was the rent on the house?
$650 a month.
And you want from her $3,900 because she moved out owing you that much rent
6
for the whole
months
6
more
months' rent.
rent.
You're not going to get that, sir. But what I am going to give you is 2 months' rent. She should have given you a couple of months' notice. This is going to teach you a very good lesson. You rent your house again, keep your pants zipped up. Look elsewhere for your social life, sir. You don't mix business with pleasure. It was a very smart thing for you to say to her when you first started the relationship, because that's what you said. You didn't follow through. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
So, you cleaned up the house, you made repairs on the house. She should have given you notice, at least 2 months' notice. She didn't. Go rent the house, live there yourself, go, be happy, have a nice life. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,300.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
She didn't know at the time who was there at the house. When she found out, she used that as a crutch to blow up, infuriation, and create a scene and find a way to get out of her bills and her situation.
I hope he goes on with his life and be happy, because I moved to Norfolk, Virginia, and I love it there.
Don't mix business with pleasure.
18-year-old bank teller Amanda McClenathan is suing her ex-roommate, 20-year-old Alyssa Connell, for unpaid rent and a security deposit. Alyssa is countersuing for an assault and the return of her belongings.
Now, this is case number 583 in the matter of McClenathan versus Connell. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated.
What's your first name?
Amanda.
How old are you, Amanda?
19.
How long have you been living on your own?
Since January.
You go to school or you work?
I go to school and work.
What school do you go to?
Eastern Connecticut State University.
And what about you? How old are you?
20.
You go to school also?
Yes.
Same school?
No.
What school?
Three Rivers Community College.
How long have you known each other?
Since freshman year of high school.
According to the complaint, you girls decided to live together with one boy or two boys?
It was just one to begin with.
Which boy? Raise your right hand. Had to think about that for a minute.
Yep.
You are John.
Yep.
John with the paintball gun.
Yeah.
And I gather that after you moved in, you're going to tell me when things didn't work out. And according to your complaint, the defendant moved out owing you some money. Owed you money for rent and a deposit. She says that she owes you a little bit for rent, right?
Mostly for...
Not what you said here. You said you owed her a little bit for rent. Not as much as she wants, but that you have a counterclaim because you claim that she has some of your property and she assaulted you.
She threw a soda bottle at me.
Just say yes or no.
Yes.
I'm going to get to your story in a second. When did you sign your lease?
A little bit before January 1st when we moved in.
And what was the rent?
$1,200 a month.
Who was helping you pay your rent?
I work 3 jobs and go to school, so I pay my own rent.
That's pretty good. And what about John with the paintball gun?
He works full-time. He's a workaholic. He works all the time.
Good. You're supposed to split the rent 3 ways.
Yes.
You say that Miss Connell had trouble coming up with rent and deposit.
Yes.
Go ahead, let me hear.
Okay. When we first moved in, we each had to pay $647.50 for the first month's rent, deposit, all that. And she could only come up with $300, so I covered her. It was $347.50. And since I handle all the bills, everything's in my name, I request that all the rent is made by January 20th so I can send it out for February 1st. On January 20th, Alyssa still didn't have any money because she was suspended from work. So I covered her then too. So I sent the rent out on January 20th, and it would have been $400.
So you covered her for that money?
Yes.
So far she owes you $747.50. Is that right?
Yes.
Am I right or am I wrong?
You're right.
Go ahead.
So then it was January 29th. I was babysitting for a family friend, and my little brother was at the house, but she wanted to have a party. I said, that's fine, just keep it downstairs, keep it in the basement, because I have little kids here. I don't want them seeing all that, because they were partying pretty hard. And then she kept bringing people upstairs, even though I asked her not to. So we locked the doors so that people that were coming there, we were all pretty drunk, we were just like banging on the door, and we wouldn't let them upstairs. So one of them threatened John, and that's when John shot the paintball gun out in the yard. And Alyssa was really mad. She came upstairs and she started screaming at him. She was really, really drunk. So she was like yelling at him, and then she started yelling at me, and she ran at me like a chimpanzee. And obviously I knew she was really drunk and I wasn't going to sit there and fight with her, so I just let her. She left. She took her bottle of Captain and she left. Then on the 3rd of February, she called John and said, because we weren't letting her party there anymore, that it wasn't fun living there anymore and she didn't want to live there, so she was moving out. On the 5th, she came back, took her bed and most of her belongings. On the 7th, of February. The room smelled disgusting, so I finally went in there. Well, actually, James went in there and trying to find what smelled, and found 2 bags of rotten frozen meatballs. That was the smell. It smelled revolting.
Is that right, James?
Yes.
And
what were you doing with meatballs in your room?
I don't think they were mine, so I don't know what she's talking about. I wouldn't have meatballs in my room.
Maybe one of your friends brought the meatballs.
Nobody was in my room that night.
What kind of a party were you having?
Actually, to set the story straight, it wasn't my party. We had been having parties every Saturday except for the 22nd because it snowed that day. Then on the 29th, we had people calling us saying, hey, we heard you're having a party.
Who were they calling?
Mine and Amanda's cell phones. And actually,
anybody call your cell phone?
I'm sure people did.
Did you tell them that you were having a party?
No.
Yes, she did.
No, I did not. I never said that we were having a party.
Were you downstairs partying with your friends?
I was down there for a little bit, but I kept coming upstairs because I didn't even know half the people. Her friends were down there also, though.
Did she have small children upstairs?
Yes, she did.
So then I gather she did not go downstairs.
She was downstairs for a little bit.
I was not.
No, I don't believe that. What happened to the rent? $747.50.
When we first moved in, it was one of those things where we had to come up with the money because the guy wanted us to sign the lease. Because
of course, that's what happened.
Yes, he was going back to Maryland. So I got money from my mother. She wrote me a $200 check, and then we said the rest of it would come up with along the way. So she covered some of it. She covered $135 of mine. And
well, she says she covered $347.50.
John gave $1,000.
I'm asking you about your money. I'm not interested in anybody else. She said she covered $347.50 for you. Is that correct?
No.
How much did she cover for you?
I'm not sure of these. I want to say $135 she covered of mine because she was also paying for James to move in.
I'm talking about your money. Show me proof that you gave her $647.50, please.
I didn't give her all of it.
Close to it. Around January. Can I have that, please? Around January of 2005. This is December 20th, 2004. Check made out to you for $200 that you cashed.
Yes.
What's that for?
That her mother paid $200 of her. So out of the $300 that she paid, her mother paid $200 of it, and her mom made the check out to me.
So she owes.
So she did give $300, but she owed $647.50.
$647.50, leaving $347.50. Do you understand?
She didn't put in all the money, though. John put in some of it.
I don't care who put it in. She'll give it back to John.
Okay.
You owe the money. You didn't pay
general,
for it.
Yes.
$347.50. Okay. January.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. Linda McClenathan says ex-roommate Alyssa Connell owes for rent and a security deposit. Alyssa claims Amanda assaulted her with a can of soda.
Now, when did you move out in February?
On February 4th, I packed up some of my belongings. I was not planning to move out. She assumed I was.
I don't care. You were there in February.
Until the 4th.
Then you owe the rent for February.
The reason I moved out, though, was because initially I called up the landlord and I had called the police also because she had become very temperamental. She wrote on my door with a permanent marker. She threatened me with retaliation. And so I was calling the police, talking to them what I should do about this because I don't feel safe living with her. She's going to be throwing things at me, threatening me. I have a brand new car and I don't want anything happening to it because she's the type of person who will egg a person's car if she doesn't like them.
Well, let me ask you this question, Miss Connell. When did she do this to you, these things?
On February 2nd, which was a Wednesday, she threw a soda bottle at me.
That's the assault you're talking about?
Yes.
And she wasn't a bottle. According to your answer, it was a can.
A can or a bottle.
Did she hit you with it?
Yes.
Where?
In the leg.
Did you go to a doctor?
No.
Why not?
Because it was just like a bruise or something that it left.
What do you mean, just like a bruise or something?
It was just a bruise that it left.
Do you have a photograph of it?
I had a camera that had pictures on it of all the damages that she did to the house, the 2 doors that she broke.
I'm not interested in the house. I asked you about your leg.
Well, there was pictures on it, but she stole it out of my room.
That's not true, Your Honor.
Let's move on from the assault. February 2nd, you had this altercation.
Yes.
You moved out some stuff on February 4th.
Yes.
Had you paid February's rent on the 20th of January?
Not yet.
Why not?
Because, she said, I was suspended from work, which was a whole sexual harassment retaliation type thing that we're
You owed the money.
Yes, I know.
Well, you should have paid her. So far that's $747.50, which is exactly what she's suing for, which is what you owe her. Now let's get to your counterclaim, okay? Because I've just taken care of the assault. It's not nice if you threw a soda can at her. Value of personal property and damages. What personal property does she have of yours?
Do you want the list, or do you want me to just read it to you?
Read it to me.
Okay. I left 2 washers and a dryer.
That's a big item, washer and dryer.
She did leave those items. I have pictures of all the items that she left at the house that I took a couple days before I left for court. She just left them at the house. No one ever took them from her.
Fine, so you don't have a problem returning them?
No, she can come get them whenever she wants.
Okay. I have a sofa. 2 sofas or one?
Yes, there's 2 sofas.
2 sofas.
A chair,
a washing machine, a dryer, a chair.
Oh, she also left another chair and a punching bag.
Okay. You arranged for a truck in 5 days, madam? Go and pick up your stuff.
Yes. The fact of the matter is, though, is that I lost of sale on the washer and dryer because I could have sold it, and I had told John that I was going to come pick them up.
I know, Kate. 5 days from today, you go and pick up your stuff. Anything else?
Yes. 2 CDs, 5 belts, a black ruffled skirt, white dress pants, and my coat was damaged in the stuff that she packed up.
Do you have any of her property? Listen to me very carefully, madam. You owe her $747, and 5 days from today.
She changed the law.
And 5 days from today, she had every right to. You hadn't paid rent. It's not her problem that you got laid off from work. Get another job.
I had the job still.
Perfect. Then you should have paid rent. 5 days from today, is this your mother?
Yes.
Your mother, whoever else you want to, is going to go pick up your property that you left behind when you moved out. Your white dress with the ruffled feathers you should have taken with you when you moved. Thank you very much. This case is over.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I can't help the fact that Amanda's a compulsive liar and she likes to throw things at people.
I think it's hilarious that she said I assaulted her because I threw a cup of soda. I was 5 feet away from her. I threw a cup of soda on the floor and it splashed her.
She broke 2 doors in the house one night when she was drunk.
She's very immature, obviously.
Pick your friends a little better.
If she can't pay the rent in the beginning, don't get into a lease with her. She's not going to pay it all along.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Blair versus Cheverini. Step forward, please.
21-year-old nurse's assistant Tricia Blair is suing her ex-boyfriend, 23-year-old construction worker Joseph Cheverini, for unpaid rent and bills. Joseph says he moved out because he caught Tricia smoking marijuana with their kids.
Miss Blair, you and Mr. Cheverini lived together. You have a child together, and you have a child from a previous relationship.
Yes, ma'am.
You signed a lease for an apartment, and the thrust of your complaint is that Mr. Cheverini moved out of the apartment, leaving you with 5 months' rent to pay on the apartment, and you want him to pay the remainder of the lease, which is 5 months.
Yes, ma'am.
And he says pretty much grow up. You got a restraining order against him that was bogus. He was forced out of the house, and he has absolutely no intention
Yes, ma'am.
of paying the rent. So I have a couple of questions. When did you sign the lease?
In August of '04.
And how old are your children?
4 years old and 3 months old.
And where is the father of your 4-year-old?
He's in the Marines in North Carolina.
Were you married to him?
No.
Does he see the child?
No, he does not.
Does he support the child?
Yes, he does.
How much does he send?
$294 a month, court ordered.
When was the last time you were employed?
March of last year.
Who supported your household while you were living with Mr. Cheverini?
I collected disability.
What was the nature of your disability?
I have to have surgery on my stomach. I was born with intestinal problems, and I've had to have several surgeries to fix it.
You mean your disability didn't prevent you from having 2 children, but it prevents you from working?
Yes, I can't lift over 5 to 7 pounds. I'm not allowed to lift my arms above my head. I have problems holding
You
out
can't lift
through.
more than 5 to 7 pounds. Who lifts your babies?
Well, my son, he walks, but he
Well,
was
your son didn't walk when he was 3 months old or 6 months old and 9
I
months
had
old.
had surgery prior to that, and I hadn't had any problems until just before I had my daughter. My stomach surgery came undone just because it's been 8 years since I had my last surgery, just from normal wear and tear on my body.
How much does your daughter weigh now?
Right now, she weighs 13 pounds.
Who supported your household for the last year?
Me and him, we split things evenly. I gave my child support plus my disability.
You weren't collecting disability all during that time.
I have been. I have been collecting since we lived in our apartment disability. The last check I received was in October. We moved in August.
But that was
September,
before your
October.
daughter was born.
Yes.
You told me that you weren't sick before your daughter was born.
No, I
Didn't
was
you just
ill
tell me
my whole
that everything was okay until you didn't have a little more wear and tear
I'm
after
sorry,
your
Your
daughter
Honor,
was
what I
born?
meant to say was that I was having problems during my pregnancy. I was seeing my physician regularly, and he advised me that because I had found out in March that I was pregnant, that I should not work because I could not lift and it would cause harm to the baby.
There are an awful lot of things you can do without lifting 7 to 10 pounds, like answering a phone. That only weighs a couple of ounces. That's a job.
My daughter is only 3 months. I haven't been working due to the fact that she's so young right now.
So that the baby is with you all the time and you manage to lift 13 pounds.
I have no choice. He's not in the home. What am I going to do? Let her starve to death?
All I'm suggesting to you, Miss Blair, is that when people scam the government, it irritates me.
I would never.
Well, you are. Because if you're lifting a 13-pound baby, you can lift something 7 pounds and get a job. And if you're taking care of a child that weighs more than 7 pounds, then whatever you said to Social Security disability, which is I cannot lift anything above 7 pounds, is not true because you do every day. Hey, I forgot what your complaint is. All right. So there came a time he moved out of the house. When did you move out, sir?
Just recently, about a month ago.
And you took the 2 children with you?
Yes.
Why?
Because I have a problem with her excessive partying.
What do you mean excessive partying? What does that mean?
You know, drinking and other uses.
I don't know. We're in court. You tell me. She drinks and she uses drugs?
Occasionally.
What kind of drugs?
Marijuana.
And when you came home from work about a month ago, what was it that precipitated you leaving?
The house was full of smoke, and my newborn baby was in the house along with the 4-year-old.
What kind of smoke?
Pot smoke.
Really?
Rana, that's not true.
I'll get to you in a second. What did you say to her?
Well, we got into an argument, and she decided she was going to leave with the kids, and I wasn't having that. So I had called the cops to arrest her because she had previous warrants for assault and driving on a suspended license because I didn't want her to take the kids out of my house.
Okay. And that was successful, so they came and they arrested her.
Yep.
And you took the children. Where did you take the children?
To my sister's house.
Under what circumstances does Ms. Blair get the children back?
She put a restraining order out saying, using false allegations, saying I assaulted her. Yes, Your Honor.
I'd like to see the allegations.
Saying I've hit her several times and verbally assaulted.
All right, so she filed this petition asking for a protective order for herself and for the children.
Correct.
And she wants temporary custody of the minor child, and that is Jada. That's your daughter.
Yep.
The other one she doesn't need custody of because she already has custody of that child. And when the police came to your house, what happened?
They gave me the papers and they said that I had to release the baby.
And did you?
Yes, with no problems.
And that was when, sir?
I don't know.
February 23rd, Your Honor.
Okay, and in the petition you asked him to stay away from you. Is that right? So how could you ask him for rent?
The claim has been dismissed since March 11th.
Just a second. So you dismissed the claim on March 11th?
Yes. When I was
indicating that you were in fear for your life and safety and in fear for your children, you needed a protective order. And I'm asking you, between February 23rd and March 11th, what happened to alleviate your fear?
I was hoping to reconcile everything. I wanted to get back together. I was hoping maybe we could go to family counseling.
You mean after you said all of these horrible things about him? He
Your
hit
Honor,
you,
he
kicked
said
you.
so many...
I'm speaking. He kicked you, he beat you, he hit you in front of your brother, he hit you in front of your sister, and abused you, both verbally and physically. Then you wanted to reconcile with him.
We have 2 children, Your Honor.
So the answer is, nothing happened between February 23rd and March 11th when you dropped the case. All of a sudden you
I had
felt
spoken
safe.
with his lawyer. His lawyer was trying to get us into family counseling. We were hoping to make things work for the sake of the children.
It didn't work.
I know.
And now you're living in the apartment? I suggest you stay there. He's not paying for it.
I can't
afford him. Then move. He's not coming back to a situation where, on your whim, you can go and get a protective order put out against him, citing egregious acts of assault where you are in fear for your life, and then miraculously, in a relatively short period of time, without any intervention, that fear is gone. So he would be an idiot to live with you, knowing that you know how to do this. I think he would be an idiot to come back home because you resorted to this in order to get the children back.
Your Honor, he filed false charges with Child Family Services saying that I was an unfit parent, I can't take care of my children. They came into my house and they found nothing at all to say that I was an unfit parent.
One thing that they should do, is they should do a hair follicle test to see if you use drugs.
He has used drugs also. He is addicted to coke.
So is what you're telling me is it's okay for you to use marijuana?
Your Honor, I have not
because
smoked
listen to me. You said it. He uses drugs too, is what you said.
No,
so is what you're telling me is it's okay for you to use drugs because the father uses drugs also? Is that what you're telling me? All I said was...
Since my child has been... Since I've been pregnant, a long time ago. We've been in a relationship for 2 years. My daughter, it only takes 9 months to conceive a child. He was using
No, it
things
doesn't
against
take
me
9
from-
months. It takes 9 seconds. Miss Blair, you have no case. You currently seeking custody of
No,
this
he's
child?
not.
When is your next court date?
Supposedly April 4th.
You suggest to the court that both of you submit to hair follicle tests because you now have this on tape where she says that you are addicted to cocaine, and you say merely a month ago she was using marijuana to the extent that the fumes were all over your house.
Your Honor, that was his nephew.
Just a second. So that if, in fact, she had used marijuana, it stays in the hair.
I know.
And there's a buildup. But I'm going to tell you something, people in glass houses.
No. I have nothing to worry about.
Very good. Miss Blair, your case is dismissed. That's all.
Step out.
It was unfair that I'd have to pay the rent after she got a restraining order against me. If she gets counseling, I'm willing to, reconcile. I'm always there to support my kids. I love my kids to death.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Banukowitz versus Broder, step forward, please.
16-year-old Nicholas Banukowitz and his father, Mark, are suing the boyfriend of Nicholas's mother, truck driver Richard Broder, for an unpaid loan to pay bills.
Mr. Banukowitz, how old are you, sir?
16.
This is your dad?
Yes.
You're living with him now?
Yes.
Tell me your first name.
Nicholas.
Nicholas, this gentleman, Mr. Broder,
Yes.
was your mom's boyfriend.
Yes.
Who is this?
I'm the mom.
Are you back together again?
Yes.
You weren't for a while.
Correct.
Anyway, you went to live for a brief period of time with your mother and her boyfriend.
I lived there off and on
And when you weren't living there, where were you living?
with my father.
According to what I read, it is your claim that you loaned Mr. Broder $550 because things got financially tight in the house. And he asked you if you could lend him some money. You were working, you had a job after school. And you did.
Yes, ma'am.
Then they broke up for a while. You wanted your money back? He says that it was not a loan, it was towards the payment of household expenses because he put a roof over your head. That's what you're saying.
Correct.
How old were you, Nicholas, when you moved with your mom and Mr. Broder during the period of time that you gave him this money?
15.
And where had you been working?
The supermarket.
What did you do there?
I stocked the shelves.
What did you earn an hour?
Around then, like $7.50.
How long did you work there?
I'm still there now.
So you've been working there for a couple of years?
Yes.
You work there after school?
Yes.
How do you do in school?
Good.
Great. Now, when you lived with your mother and Mr. Broder, was it your mother's house or Mr. Broder's house?
It was my mother's, but they were moving, so that's when he asked me for the money.
Was it a rental property?
Yes.
When they moved, did you move with them?
I live there. I go there once in a while, like on the weekend and stuff. I don't live there permanently.
Now, tell me about when Mr. Broder asked you for money. Do you remember when it was?
It was November 30th, 2003. He asked me for $450, and he promised to pay me back.
What did he say?
He goes, do you think you could lend me some money? We were trying to move, we were a little short.
Where were you, in the house?
Yes.
Where in the house?
The dining room.
Where was your mother?
Right next to me.
So he said, could you lend me some money? I'm a little short, we want to move. And what did you say to him?
I said, okay, and then he promised to pay me back.
What did he say? Don't tell me he promised. What did he say?
He said, I'll pay you back by the 6th of December, because I'm getting a bonus or something like that from work.
Where did you keep the money?
In my house, in my room.
So you gave him the money in cash?
Yes.
When did you give him the other 100?
In September of 2004.
Why, if he hadn't paid you back the money?
Because I trusted him. He was my mother's boyfriend, and I figured he would pay me back.
Between November 2003 and September 2004, almost a year passed. Did you ask him for the money?
Every month, I sent him a letter saying how much he owed me.
You have a copy of the letters?
Yep. And I also sent him a certified letter.
Mr. Broder, whether you say that this was a gift or a loan, did you ever respond to any of these letters?
No.
Why not?
I just put them aside, and because at the time I wasn't working or anything, and he really never persisted.
Okay. Now, tell me your version of this $550.
At the time, we were in financial difficulties. We both asked him for the money. And at the time, I didn't have a job. So
What about her?
She was working.
So?
So we were just paying the bills. And at the time, we ended up breaking up. And the reason why on this loan after a year is when we broke up, and that's when his father and him got involved and wanted to take me to court for the money back, for the loan.
Well, you keep saying loan, which is a nice thing. That makes my job much easier, Mr. Broder.
Well, he was living with us for a while and everything.
You used the word loan twice.
That's what he put on the paper as a
No,
loan.
that's what you just said. I understand what he said. You used the word loan twice. Do I make you that nervous, Mr. Broder?
No, you don't make me nervous.
At all?
No.
You mean you just step in your own mouth on your own, whether I'm make you nervous or not? You just said to me was, I wasn't working. The mother and I asked for the loan together. The reason after a year I didn't pay back the loan was he wasn't pushing it. I mean, what's your defense to this action, Mr. Broder? I'd be really interested.
Your Honor, at the time, he was working when I lent him the $450.
Who cares? I asked him. I want to know his defense. I'm listening. And I have other things to do today. Do we have a defense, Mr.
No,
Broder?
we don't have a defense. I'm
Judgment
sorry.
for the plaintiff in the amount of $550. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
He should have known that he was going to have to pay me back, one way or the other.
She crashed and burned me.
I feel like I was taken advantage of.
I was wrong.
I think he should have stood up a little more for himself because it was intended as a gift to us.
I'm just glad he got his money back and we didn't have to go any further.
It's a gift is a gift.
I really don't have much of a relationship with him.
He's my son. I love him to death. No big deal.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Clark versus Beaver. Step forward, please.
Registered nurse Lori Clark is suing the father of her son's bandmate, communications consultant David Beaver, for the cost of musical equipment. Lori says her son's equipment was damaged in a fire at David's home.
Mrs. Clark, your son and the defendant's son are in a band together. Your son had some music equipment that he had brought over to Mr. Beaver's home. Mr. Beaver's home was destroyed by fire. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I don't think it was an intentional fire.
No.
It was an accident. And according to you, your son's music equipment was destroyed. And you want Mr. Beaver to pay for that. Step up, sir. Tell me your name.
Zachary Clark.
Zachary, when did you bring this music equipment to the Beaver home?
Right when we started.
Give me a month.
November, maybe, I don't know.
Okay. Let's say November. And who did you speak to before you brought it over there?
Ben.
Who's that?
His son.
How old are you?
20.
Is Ben the person that you're in the band with?
Yeah.
And tell me about the conversation that you had with Ben. Step up, Ben. Tell me about the conversation.
He answered a thing I put up at a Guitar Center for looking for a drummer, and we just talked, and I brought my stuff over. We were just interested in playing music together.
Where was your music equipment stored?
In Ben's room, which is like the basement, the whole lower level.
When for the first time did you meet Mr. Beaver?
The first day I went over there, I think, yeah.
Did you ever have a conversation with him about your music equipment? Before the fire?
Before it?
Before it?
No.
What makes you think, Miss Clark, that an accidental fire renders Mr. Beaver liable for this music equipment?
I claimed it on my insurance company, and they denied the request to cover the equipment.
So? What makes you think that he's responsible?
Because that's where the equipment was at the time of the fire, was in the basement of his home.
So?
The equipment is damaged. There's smoke damage, extensive smoke damage.
So?
And I was under the impression that he could claim the damage on his insurance company.
Well, maybe he could, but what makes you think that if he didn't, that he would be liable for the damaged equipment? It was not stored there with his permission. He certainly did not assume any liability to act in any more than a reasonable and prudent manner with regard to it, not to do anything to actively damage it or to prevent it from being damaged from some other force, not leaving it under an open window to let it be hit by the elements. Just reasonable precaution. But this is a fire. This is an accident. Why would he be liable for this equipment?
I guess I thought because the equipment was on his property that both of us would claim the equipment to our insurance.
Well, let's say your car is parked in a parking lot, outside parking lot, and from overhead, a plane emanates some stuff, piece of metal, falls down. You don't know where the plane is. You don't know who the owner of the plane is, what company it is, but the thing comes down and destroys your car. Who's responsible? The owner of the parking lot?
Possibly myself or...
Not the owner of the parking lot, just because the car happens to be sitting in a parking lot. The Beaver is responsible for certain things. If he knew that the equipment was there, if he knew that the equipment was there under these circumstances, then he's responsible to exercise ordinary, prudent care to see that nothing happens to it. How did this fire start, Mr. Beaver?
It started with my wife's car. We have a tuck-under garage. Her car caught on fire, which then involved the house from there. So about a third of the house was damaged by the fire, and the rest was all smoke damage.
Did you question your insurance company with regard to this young man's equipment?
Yes, Your Honor, I did.
And?
The fact that we did not own the equipment, we technically could not claim it on our coverage, and we did not.
So he could not claim it on his insurance, so you want him to pay for the damaged equipment out of his own pocket. I don't think he's liable. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate, but I don't think he's liable. Is the equipment usable?
It works, but they told us not to use it from the Savage Audio. Mr. Beaver brought it in and had it checked out, and it says that smoke damage exceeds the value.
Well, are you working after school?
Do I work? No.
Maybe you better get a job so you can buy some new equipment. Right?
Yep.
Good idea. Case dismissed.
All right, like Steve, you may step out.
I'm a little disappointed. I was hoping that one of the insurance companies had to take care of the damages.
It's what we expected.
Our company didn't, and that would leave it then to the other company.
We provided several options for a settlement in this case that were not acceptable to the plaintiff.
Not true.
First of all, to replace the equipment. Second of all, to pay the deductible on her insurance.
He was talking to my son, and when I tried to reach him, it was very difficult.
In the meantime, the boys in the band have been using the equipment and playing for the last several months.
I just want to jam, that's all. Quit work, play music. We just were trying to play music.
I'm just kind of speechless right now.
Judge said it all.
Yes, case number 246 on the calendar in the matter of Potters versus Wells. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Sir, have a seat.
Ms. Potter, the defendant is your former husband.
Yes, ma'am.
And your claim is for two things. First, you claim that he filed a report to Child Protective Services,
yes,
causing you some stress.
Yes, ma'am.
The second has to do with an income tax bill that emanated from the time that you and the defendant were married, that you're paying.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Wells says that he was concerned about his daughter. You have a daughter together.
Yes, we do.
And he doesn't deny that he called Child Protective Services.
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And that he pays child support, so the tax bill is yours.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
So let's deal with those two things. Ms. Potter, when were you married and when were you divorced?
We were married May of 1996, separated in December of 99, legally divorced January of 2001.
And when was your daughter born?
She was born August 19th, 1997.
And you have visitation with your daughter?
Yes, ma'am, on the weekends.
And you pay child support?
Yes, I do, diligently.
Now, Mr. Wells, when did you call in a report to Child Protective Services and why, sir?
It was about a month ago. I noticed a change in my child's demeanor, calling me during the night, crying, saying that she did not want to be there anymore, that it was a bad place to live, they were being mean to her, which I've heard before. Taking that she's 7, probably some discipline going on over there, so you try to take that in, you know, to occurrence. But after a week of this, and even in the mornings, I heard her and her mother arguing, and the child terribly upset before she went to school. So then that following weekend, she tells me that this gentleman over here had beat her with a belt. That,
who is this?
This is my boyfriend.
All right. Which really concerned me. Did flip on that one, that he had took some pictures of her in her room. So I called Child Services, and I spoke with the lady, and I haven't caused them any grief in the time they've been together, haven't, you know, interfered in their lives. And so after explaining this to the Child Services, they felt like that I should file a complaint with them. You know, and that, needless to say, leaving the child alone at the bus stop, getting off at the bus, wandering around the neighborhood for a half an hour unsupervised, sitting on the front porch waiting in the afternoon for 15 to 20 minutes at a time without no supervision. All of these concerns came out in that.
Okay. But primarily you called because of the photographs that your daughter told you were taken
Absolutely.
of her and the fact that she said that this gentleman disciplined her with a belt.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Okay. What's your name?
It's Rob Brialt, ma'am.
Step up. Last name?
Brialt.
How long have you and Miss Potter been together, Mr. Briault?
About a year and a half now.
And you live together?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have children?
Yes, I do. 3 of them.
And where do they live?
They live with their mom in Colorado.
And where do you and Miss Potter live?
In Cary, North Carolina.
Did you ever discipline Miss Potter's daughter?
Just once, ma'am.
And tell me about that incident.
My children were visiting me for approximately about 5 weeks, and all the girls were up in one room sleeping, or supposedly sleeping, and they're right above the TV room, you know, where we're watching TV, and you can hear them talk and all that, and yell up there a couple times, you know, go to sleep, girls, it's getting late, go to sleep. Since the 2 of mine were obviously up there, and they're acting up, I went up there with the belt, and, you know, spanked them, slapped, you know, gave them a hit on the rear end, you know, to the 2 of my girls, and it would be only fair to the other 2 to not play favorites with Tatum. So she got it as well. And then they all quieted down and they all went to sleep.
Might I add, it was a swat. She didn't even cry. It wasn't a spanking.
To Miss Potter.
Okay, sorry.
That's really not an issue that's before me. Okay. What's before me is your claim that he called Child Protective Services without a basis. So that's what I'm trying to get to.
Okay.
Then there's an issue of photographing your daughter. Mm-hmm. Now tell me about that. Have you photographed your daughter in her room?
What led up to that? Tatum was supposed to be upstairs cleaning her room. I yelled up, Tatum, are you cleaning your room? Yes, Mommy. So Rob's like, well, we'll see. He took this phone, a camera phone, you know, most of them have it. He peeked around the stairs, snapped her sitting on the floor playing when she's supposed to be cleaning her room, came downstairs, downloaded on the computer, showed me, Tatum, come down here right now. She came down. I'm going to remember, Mommy always says she has eyes in the back of her head. I can see everything you're doing. What's this? She looks at it. I'm like, you weren't cleaning your room. She's like I'm busted. You know?
Nothing terribly wrong with taking a picture and saying, listen, the picture, this speaks 1,000 words, you weren't cleaning your room. But as it's relayed to her father, that doesn't sound good. Do you understand?
You're absolutely right. Tatum came home one weekend from his house, said, Dad's going to call child services or something on you. I'm like, what? And she's all, yeah, and she told me why. So I get on the phone. I'm like, what are you going to do? Tatum's telling me you're going to do this. And he's like, yeah, I have a concern, my daughter. I'm like, that's a very good concern. This is what happened.
Miss Potter, let me dispose of the first part of your claim. And I want you also
yes, ma'am.
To listen carefully, Mr. Wells. Is this your only child?
Yes, ma'am, it is. Or I beg your pardon, I do have an older son in California.
How old?
13 years old.
Little girls sometimes are manipulative.
Absolutely.
And let me dispose of Mr. Briault first so that he can sit down. Never discipline her child with an implement. Shouldn't discipline her child anything other than with words anyway. But you have no right to discipline her child with a belt. Period. End of discussion. You're not even her stepfather. You have no relationship to this child at all. And the fact that you wanted to be fair because you were disciplining your children, and so you wanted to be fair and your children shouldn't be angry with you, so you disciplined her child, that's ridiculous. Because there are other ways of telling the 3 little girls who were upstairs playing to be quiet because they were interfering with your television time, other than taking a belt and going upstairs and hitting them. We understand each other?
Yes, ma'am.
Sit down. He hasn't assumed the legal responsibility in any way to your daughter. Even when he does, I wouldn't let him discipline my daughter corporally. But certainly not as long as he's just your boyfriend. What kind of commitment is that?
Judge Judy continues in a moment. Angela Potter says ex-husband Michael Wells maliciously filed false charges with Child Protective Services. Angela also says Michael owes for back taxes.
So when his daughter complained to him that she was hit with a belt, that was true. And as a non-custodial parent, because he has visitation, and he's concerned that A, some stranger in the house is hitting my child with a belt, and the mother isn't doing anything about it, and the same stranger is taking pictures of her in her bedroom, because that's the way it's presented.
Right.
He has a legitimate complaint. And I do not find that he maliciously called Child Protective Services, because you've been separated since 1999. This is 5 years later. Is this the first time he's called Child Protective Services?
Yes, ma'am.
And he had a reason to do it.
But...
And I don't care whether you explained it to him or not. You can't explain to him satisfactorily that this man took a belt to your daughter. There's no satisfactory explanation for that.
Okay.
Now let's get to number 2. let's get to the tax returns. Can I see the tax bill that you got with regard to the taxes owed?
Well, here's the whole statement from 1998.
It's just a retaliation suit, ma'am, is all. She threatened, as soon as Child Protection Services was contacted her, she called
Mr.
up.
Wells.
Yes, ma'am.
Listen to me very carefully, my friend.
Yes, ma'am.
Was the first part of my judgment fair to you?
Yes, ma'am.
So you think I'm a fair lady?
Yes, I do.
I don't care whether it's in retaliation or not. If she's been paying off your debt, I'm going to find out why.
Okay.
Well, this says, sir, at the time when you were still married and still together, there was a deficiency in your tax returns of almost $9,000. How much of it did you pay?
Haven't paid any of it.
Why?
Because all my tax returns goes to child support. It's mandated by the state. They take my tax returns and apply it towards state arrears in child support.
Just a second. So what you're telling me is that they take your tax refunds because you were a deadbeat father with regard to your child support, either for this child or another child.
During the arbitration of the separation, yes. I did go a period of time because Ms. Potter had...
You are a deadbeat with regard to either this child or your son.
I wouldn't call it a deadbeat. I'd say...
Deadbeat doesn't pay child support as directed. That's a deadbeat.
Well, it wasn't paid until mandated by the court, ma'am, and then it has been paid every month since then for the last 5 years.
Well, arrears suggest, Mr. Wells, that the state has determined that you owed money for one child or two?
For 2 children, I paid.
For both children. So I'm going to ask you the next question, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Why didn't you start to pay her and say, listen, we have $9,000 that we owed. Clearly, half of that is mine because we were married and filed jointly. So what you're telling me is you decided that she's got to get stuck with this tax bill. Is that what you're telling me?
No, ma'am. I just thought that $9,000 was strong for one tax we filed together 1 year.
So?
And she hasn't, applied me with any documentation, has a contact.
Here, just a second. Here you go. I want him to have the documentation.
Absolutely.
Take a look.
$8,881.
That's what it says.
All right.
So, since you filed those taxes, since you were living together, were you working at that time, Mr. Wells?
Yes, ma'am. As a subcontractor at that point.
Very good. And what were you doing?
I was an executive assistant for a recruiting firm.
Okay. And so far you've paid about $7,100.
Yes, these
and
are...
there's, right, I see it. And there's still $2,030 owed.
Penalties and interest, pretty much.
Mr. Wells, the defense that you have to this, as I indicated before, because I've read it, your defense is, as far as our taxes, my wife filed our taxes and they are in her name. That's
Yes,
what you swore to. Internal Revenue Service says that you filed married filing jointly.
Absolutely.
So that is incorrect.
Yes, ma'am, it was. But that was the first time I'd seen that piece of paper right there.
Good. Well, I'm glad that you saw the piece of paper, Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Wells, because you owe her $4,500. That's half the tax bill and penalties. Judgment for the plaintiff. That's all.
Thank you.
All you are excused. You may step out.
Ms. Potter tries to get every little bit of money out of me she can. She always has.
All he had to do is pay off the tax. He didn't want to do that, so look what cost him in the end.
As far as me and Ms. Potter, we will not have any kind of relationship whatsoever.
You just can't reason with him.
Just as long as the well-being of my daughter's taken care of.
I do the best I can as a single mom.
The matter of Kurtz versus Mansfield. Step forward, please.
Engineer Andrew Kurtz is suing teacher Carolyn Mansfield for car repair bills. Andrew says Carolyn's unleashed dog ran into his Porsche.
Mr. Kurtz, you were driving along a country road, and according to your complaint, the defendant's dog was running out and hit your car. And you want Miss Mansfield to be responsible for the $1,000 deductible that you had to pay after your insurance covered the rest of the damage to the car.
That's correct.
Miss Mansfield says that you had to have been going too fast on that road, that your car hit her dog, and that she paid over $1,200 in vet bills for the dog. And since you were probably each at fault, since the dog was out, which is how the dog came to collide with your car in the first place, she's taking care of her bills and you should take care of yours, right?
That's absolutely right.
Well, that's your position anyway.
Yes, well, that is my position.
Where do you live?
I live in Placerville, California.
Are there any rules and regulations where you live with regard to dogs being leashed or being confined in either a yard or your home?
I understand there is a leash law. There's supposed to
Yes.
be.
So your dog, I assume, does not comply with the leash law.
My dog complies whenever she can. However, there are some holes in my neighbor's fence, and occasionally the dog has gotten into the neighbor's yard. On the day in question, I did not know the dog was out of our yard. In fact, my husband and I were getting ready to go to a Christmas party. It's December 21st, about 4 o'clock, and I turned to my son and I said, "We're getting ready to go to the party now. See you later." And Charlie said, "Well, I'm going out to the backyard to play with the dogs." And I turned around, I saw one of our...
How many dogs do you have?
Two. And I saw
what
one
kind
of
of dogs are...
Pardon?
What kind of dogs are they?
They're mutts. They were both strays that eventually showed up, and we just didn't quite get them to the pound, and now they're ours.
And how long have you had them?
7 years.
And how often does this particular dog get out of your yard?
Well, anymore, not at all, but...
Then,
at that time, pretty often.
Okay. So you were on notice that your dog knew how to get out.
But my dog, this is the truth, Judge Judy, my dog was extremely streetwise. I know that sounds crazy, but this dog had grown up, had about 2 years in this area. It was a wild dog. We had seen it around, and I decided to try to tame the dog so that I could catch it. Animal control would not pick it up unless we could contain it. So over a period of about 6 months, I was able to tame the dog, and by then I just kind of fell in love with her. She has absolutely become a part of our family, and this dog never ran into the road or in front of a car. The dog would literally go to a driveway and look both ways before it crossed. People would note that. It's incredibly smart, or it couldn't have survived the 2 years in this neighborhood where people would come up from the Bay Area in their fancy sport cars driving really fast.
Miss Mansfield, listen to me very carefully. We're getting a little beyond ourselves.
Okay, but I have some pictures for you.
We're getting beyond us. Now, what time of the day were you riding down the country road?
It was 3 p.m. in the afternoon.
Where were you going?
Going to an apple orchard.
In December.
Shh. Miss Mansfield.
Yes,
Miss Mansfield. Okay.
Is the weekend before Christmas. We were going up there to get some apple cider and some apple pies.
Okay. Tell me what happened with Miss Mansfield's dog.
I was driving along the road, and the dog just came straight out into the road, and it was in full stride when I hit the dog with the car.
Did you stop?
Yeah, I just took my foot off the gas and watched the dog in the rearview mirror. My fiancée, Christina, was just like, oh my God, we just hit a dog. And then I pulled over at the first point that I could pull fully clear of the roadway.
And what did you do? Put your pictures down.
Okay.
We got out of the car and walked back towards where the dog had limped off the roadway, and I walked back into the woods. At that point, I met an old man and a young boy there. I asked them if they saw a dog. I told them I just hit a big black dog, and he said that it sounded like the neighbor's dog, and then we found it just laying on its side.
And what did you do?
The man sent the young boy down to the Mansfield's residence to get someone to come up to the dog. We just stood there with the dog, and it was just laying on its side, panting. And then Charlie, her son, brought a pickup truck up, and we put a blanket down, put the dog on the blanket, and lifted the dog into the back of the truck.
Okay. Can I see pictures of your car? I see that you have pictures of the car there. I'm surprised that what's this dog's name, Lucky?
Lucky.
He sure was lucky.
Well.
Because I'm surprised that this dog survived.
Lucky was not supposed to survive overnight. She had severe injuries.
Okay, but she did?
She's among the land of the living.
Good, and she's now in a fenced-in yard.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're using the buried wire with the electric shock, and she's
That sounds like what you should have been using before.
And that's exactly why I paid my own vet bills, and I decided I would not sue somebody for hitting the dog, because I was trying to take my responsibility and pay the dog's vet
Ms.
bills.
Mansfield, you have a law where you live that says that dogs have to be under your control at all times, either on a leash if they're out, in a fenced yard, or in your home. But for the fact that you broke the law, your dog would not have been hit.
Mm-hmm. May I show you some of these pictures and explain one thing?
You can show me anything you like.
Okay.
You must accept the fact that but for the fact that you broke the rules, your dog would not have been hit.
Okay, but I contend the dog may not have been in the road. We have a friend who was killed right there where Mr. Kurtz pulled over. He ran right into that tree. If you don't negotiate that turn, you're going to hit that tree. And in fact, before you hit it, you will go straight over our neighbor's driveway.
Listen to me!
Needs to lay down.
Miss Mansfield, I don't care if he went up into your neighbor's living room.
But that would be private
listen to me.
Okay.
If he went up into your neighbor's living room and hit your dog, the rule says your dog must be under your control at all times. But for the fact that you, who had notice that your dog got out frequently and roamed around and was safe most of the time. Most of the time, she was really smart and really lucky. Didn't hurt anybody, didn't get hurt herself. This time she did, and it's your fault.
Okay,
oh, listen to me. Only your fault because his car did not jump up on your front porch and go into your living room and hit Lucky while she was sitting on the sofa watching TV. That didn't happen.
Excuse me, but if it was going at an unsafe speed in a residential area, it could have been Dylan. It could have been the little boy at the end of the driveway with my dog.
It could have been E.T.
But it wasn't.
It was your dog that was violating the law. You owe him $1,000. That's his deductible.
Could my son,
Judgment for the plaintiff. Step out. Goodbye.
Thank you,
Thank you, Judge. Occasionally dogs get out. If people are driving the way they're supposed to, they should be able to stop.
The dog has to be on a leash or you're going to be liable for the damage that it causes.
My dog suffered great injuries.
It's a tragedy what happened, really.
I spent 3 months doing physical rehabilitation on the dog.
It's been a lot of time and from my side, too, and money.
I couldn't work. I mean, I had to work with this dog for 3 months to get it back to life.
It was very scary.
I just think she deserved a little more justice than that.
I felt awful. Awful for the dog.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Lewis versus Robbins. Step forward, please.
Homemaker Debbie Lewis is suing her ex-husband, assembly line worker James Robbins, for half the cost of their daughter's wedding. Debbie says he reneged on his promise to pay.
Ms. Lewis, the defendant is your former husband, and according to the complaint that I read, he agreed to pay for half of your daughter's wedding. Which one of these two lovelies is getting married? What's your name?
Angie.
How old are you, Angie?
23.
When are you getting married?
I already got married. I got married in September.
And he paid for half the wedding, and it was a very reasonably priced wedding. Half the cost of the wedding was $865. And he didn't pay.
No.
And you want him to pay.
Yes.
And he did go to the wedding.
Yes. He walked her down the aisle, did everything the father does.
Okay.
Except for pay.
Okay. Now, Mr. Robbins does not deny the fact that he agreed to pay for half the wedding. Correct, sir?
Correct.
And he does not deny the fact that he went to the wedding. Correct?
Correct.
And who else went with you to the wedding?
My wife, Robin.
So, Mr. Robbins, the ball is in your court, sir. Why didn't you pay for half your daughter's wedding as you promised?
Well, because ever since I've left her in '90, she's been putting her hands in my pockets trying to get money out of me for everything. And the divorce decree that we have does say that she gets to use the kids for taxes reasons. But the state of Utah took custody from her because of verbal and physical abuse. And I got a paper here that says that the divorce decree follows the child. And it cost me $1,600 because she did claim my daughter on taxes where I have the right to. And I also have a letter from her that's showing that the custodial parent gets to claim them on taxes. And if that's the case, I didn't get claimed for 13 years that we've been divorced.
If you believe that in a certain year, I assume last year, that you had the right to claim a child as a deduction, she claims the child. You claim the child, and the IRS is going to come and look at both of your tax returns and say they will make a decision as to who is going to claim the child as a deduction. The other one will have a penalty. But you don't do a set-off. You promise to pay for half the wedding. Why didn't you pay her between September and April?
I told her that I would pay her when I could, which would...
No, that's not right. What do you mean when you could? How many children do you have?
Well, I have 4 with my wife now.
We have 3 children.
Just a second. You have 4 children now. And how many children do you have that got married last year?
Just 1.
And you said you would pay for half the wedding.
Yes, I did.
Pay for it. It's the right thing to do. And stop making excuses and stop telling me what happened in 1990. That she's had her hand in your pocket. You have
Well, it
3...
just all added up. I mean, everything's added up.
Mr. Robbins, you have altogether 7 children?
Well, I've got 4 stepchildren, 3.
Then I'm not talking about your stepchildren. They are not your responsibility.
Oh, I married them, so I feel they are.
Well, I'm telling you, by law, they are not your responsibility unless your family is on welfare, are they?
No.
Well, if your family is not on welfare, then those children are not your financial responsibility. They are the financial responsibility of their mother and their father, not you. You have primary responsibility for only 3 biological children. 3. And your first biological child was getting married. She was having a very small wedding. $865 represents your half. And if you didn't have the money to pay the $865, you should have gotten another job. If I make myself clear, sir?
Yes.
Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $865. That's all.
Thank you.
Parties are excused when they step out.
Albert Lee is suing pilot instructor Ed Meyer for damage resulting from Ed moving his plane.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, please.
Case 2145, Lee versus Meyer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Lee, you are an amateur pilot?
Yes, I was yes.
And you owned your own plane?
I bought it to train in, yes.
When did you purchase the plane?
In, I believe, April of 2021.
Did you buy it new or used?
I bought it used.
What kind of plane is it?
It's a Cirrus SR-22, 2010 type Golf.
What did you pay for it?
I paid $420,000 for it, I believe.
Is there a mortgage on the...
Yes, there is.
How much?
It's $2204 per month.
You paid $425,000 for the plane?
Yeah, I put a down payment on it. The outstanding balance is $347,000. The payment per month is $2,022.
I don't need the payment per month. I just wanted to know what you paid for it and how much you put into the plane.
Yes.
The defendant is a pilot, licensed pilot, and he was giving you some training on the plane.
Certified flight instructor, yes.
It is your claim that at some point, you'll tell me when, that the defendant was operating the plane by himself. You weren't there, and he was moving it from one part of the FBO to another part, and he hit a cone and caused substantial damage to the propeller and the engine. And while you had your insurance did cover some of it, according to you, it did not cover all of the expenses, and you want Mr. Meyer to be responsible for that. So it's a simple question. Mr. Meyer, do you remember the date that you were operating the plane when Mr. Lee was not there?
Yes.
What date?
It was in April sometime.
April of 2022?
Correct.
Do you remember the date, Mr. Lee?
Yes.
What date?
It's April 22nd.
Would that sound right?
Yes.
Okay. And from what I read in the papers, Mr. Meyer had, in fact, taken you out, but then the weather got bad. You decided that you would make your way home and that he would get the plane home when the weather was better.
Correct.
And that was on or about April 22nd.
I flew home on a commercial flight the day before on April 21st.
And you stayed with the plane?
Yes.
Now, would you agree, Mr. Meyer, that if, in fact, you hit an object with the plane, it would be your responsibility?
Yes.
Because it would mean that there was some sort of negligence involved.
Right.
And then there would be the issue of damages. Mr. Lee, you were not present when this incident happened.
I was not.
Not present.
I was not present. I was able...
No, you were not present.
I was not present.
That's the answer. Was this witness present?
He was not present, but he was the one responsible for procuring the evidence on what happened and how the propeller was damaged.
Who does he work for?
He has his own flight school, and he also manages my airplane in terms of the maintenance and the upkeep.
Okay. Could you step up, please? Tell me your last name.
Last name is Williams.
Mr. Williams, were you charged with gathering the evidence to determine what happened to the plane on the 22nd of April?
Yes, I was.
And you're paid a monthly fee by the plaintiff to manage his plane.
That's correct.
Did you retain the defendant as an instructor, or did Mr. Lee?
That was both decided by Mr. Lee and Mr. Myers to fly for him.
But you
He's
did
an
not.
independent contractor. At that.
You did not have anything to do with, as the manager of the plane, you didn't have anything to do with selecting Mr. Meyer.
I did select Mr. Meyer to fly with Albert.
You did?
Yes.
Okay. Because were you the one who introduced him to Mr. Meyer?
That's correct.
When, Mr. Lee, did you start to work with Mr. Meyer?
It was probably a prior flight where we flew to San Francisco for a business meeting I had. After that, I believe it was...
In what month?
Roughly about the same month.
In April?
Yeah, in April.
So you didn't know him for a long time?
No, not very long.
I'm going to get back to you in a minute, Mr. Williams. Prior to the defendant, had anybody else been an instructor for you?
Yes. Clinton was my primary instructor, but I flew with some other instructors as well.
But it wasn't until the month that this incident occurred that you had been connected with the defendant?
Correct.
Okay. Now, sir, how were you advised that the plane that you managed was in an accident?
I received a phone call from Ed saying that there was a problem.
From whom?
From Mr. Myers, that there was a problem with the aircraft after he taxied and did the run-up and returned the aircraft back to Signature in Las Vegas. We notified and contacted a...
Did you ask, what you would usually ask is what happened?
Yeah, what happened?
Just a second, and what did he say to you?
He said that he was having instrument problems with the aircraft and he wasn't able to take off, so he returned the aircraft. At that point in time, I contacted a Cirrus Service Center. I had 2 technicians go out and look at the aircraft, see what was wrong. At the time, the technicians found that they...
Don't tell me what they found.
Okay.
You can't tell me what they found. It's hearsay.
They send me pictures of the damage of the propeller.
May I see the photographs? Okay, so that's a fresh damage.
Correct.
Can I scroll this?
Yes, you may.
Or it's just one? Okay, so you have a picture of that. You have a picture of the cone that has a slice in it.
Correct. That's the object he hit. We also have a video showing the plane taxiing and hitting the cone at the top.
I'd like to see that as well.
Okay.
Okay, let's see what we got.
As you can see where the...
Just one second. Mr. Meyer, is that a fair and accurate representation of where the plane was before you moved it?
It should be on the last, on the far left side of that Learjet.
Okay. Oh. Mr. Meyer, do you see that you went over a cone?
It's interesting. I didn't even notice there was a cone.
You may not notice it, but you see it now.
Yes.
Okay. Your hitting of the cone caused damage to that plane. I mean, you're not talking about flying a 747. You're talking about a little single prop plane. Yeah, they like those planes you put together, we used to put together with rubber bands. I wouldn't put my behind in one of those planes for all the money in the world.
Albert Lee claims pilot instructor Ed Meyer is responsible for damage after Ed moved Albert's plane.
Okay.
In all of my years of flying, which is pretty significant, I was an airline pilot too, I've never, ever experienced that in my life.
Okay, but you see it now.
Yes.
It's not an on purpose. It's, you know, that's why they call them accidents. We don't mean for them to happen.
Right.
We don't mean for them to happen, but you do see that the plane did hit a cone.
Right.
Okay, and I have photographs of the cone that has a slice in it, and the same kind of slice from one of the propellers. Now, so that's conceded that Mr. Meyer did, in fact, hit the cone, which in all probability caused damage to the plane, caused damage to the propeller. Now, tell me about your insurance.
The insurance covered the propeller. They covered the teardown of the engine. When something strikes the propeller, they have to tear apart the engine, make sure the components...
Do you have those?
I
that
do.
paperwork for me? I'd like to see it.
Okay, so here is the insurance covered portion, and here is my covered portion that I had to come out of pocket to pick up the plane.
Okay.
And I can explain both invoices. And if you flip to the last page, that'll have the total. Insurance covered about 60-something thousand for the propeller and the engine teardown.
Okay. So the damaged propeller, Mr. Williams, causes you to have to take apart the engine, fix the engine if there was damage to the engine. Am I correct?
That's correct. The FAA requires anytime you strike an object with a propeller, the engine has to be inspected in the component parts. So they
Component parts of the engine.
Of the damage, potential damage of the engine. Internal damage that could be caused by striking an object.
Okay. The insurance covered how much, sir? Mr. Lee?
It's, it's on the invoice 60, I think it was 63,000, 64,000. It's on the last page.
The last page shows
a deposit of
$63,000.
Yes, that's it.
The deposit was 40, balance due was 23. Did the insurance company pay the entire 63?
This entire
$63,000. This is what was submitted to them.
Yes.
Okay, now I'd like you to take a look at this, Mr. Meyer. No, I'm going to actually ask Mr. Williams to take a look at this document. These are the items, Mr. Williams, that Mr. Lee says were uncovered. I would like you to go through all those items and tell me which of those items relate to the engine and which do not.
Okay, is this the total?
Carefully, because I'm going to potentially ask you about each individual thing, because there looks to me like some things that bear no relation to an engine.
Okay, so most of the items you see that are airworthiness on the airframe are the items that need to be inspected or replaced from the teardown. So your item 1, item 2, 3, 4, item 5, 6, 7, 8. These are all items that the repair shop goes through the engine and assesses whether it needs.
Well, tell me how the brakes would be impacted.
I don't think
impacted by hitting the.
Which invoice?
And I don't know, but how brakes would be impacted by hitting a nose cone.
Brake lining, I don't know what that is.
Okay. Yeah, some of these items, Your Honor, such as one of these items, the brake lines, as you pointed out, is probably not part of the.
Well, that's what I want you to go through, sir.
Okay.
Do you understand? I want you to take a marker, a pen, and circle, because I don't know a whole lot about airplanes, but I know a little bit about airplanes. I know what's routine maintenance and what has to be taken care of, because a plane either falls on its nose or falls on its tail, both of which I've experienced.
Well, this is a small invoice. This is not your. This is the.
Mr. Williams, don't ask him. I didn't ask you to have a conference with him.
Okay.
I asked you to look at that. You're the management company. I want you to strike those items that are not related to this accident and go through them very carefully, because.
Can I make a comment? Okay.
Nope.
To you directly?
Nope.
Okay.
Can I ask you something?
Can you ask me something?
Yeah. Well, he should tell you those cones are made of plastic.
I don't care. They're heavy cones. You hit the cone, and the plane flew perfectly fine before you hit the cone. It didn't run after you hit the cone. You don't have to be a genius to figure out the cone caused, your hitting of the cone caused damage to that plane. I mean, you're not talking about flying a 747. You're talking about a little this is a single prop plane.
Right.
Yeah. Me, they're like those planes you put together, we used to put together with rubber bands. I wouldn't put my behind in one of those planes for all the money in the world.
The only items I can see, Your Honor, are 2 items that may not be related to the accident, items 7 and 8.
Okay, may I have that back, please, sir? And you are familiar with planes, sir, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what you're saying is item.
The circled item.
7 and 8.
Correct.
So we have.
There's a couple of.
We have right and left main gear, which is 143 plus 270 plus 66. What about item 9? Pitch, trim, jab, nut, loose. What is that?
Probably what they do during the inspection and the tear down, they go through the aircraft itself, make sure it's airworthy. So they probably caught another item or 2. You can probably put that on item that's wasn't part of the accident.
The big ticket items, adding up all of these items, Mr. Meyer, that probably have no relation to the accident which you caused.
Correct.
Still bring the total amount to more than this court's jurisdictional limit. Can you tell me, sir, why your insurance, Mr. Williams, let's go back to you. You manage this plane. Can you tell me why Mr. Lee's insurance didn't cover all the damage to the plane?
A lot of the prospective renters or instructors that everybody uses, or we used in this case, carry their own insurance for this type of incident. Their insurance covers basically downtime, loss of operation, or in this case...
You mean Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Would have his own. Do you have your own insurance?
No.
No. Don't you do a check to find out if they have their own insurance before you recommend someone?
He had insurance, but it was lapsed.
If you have insurance that's lapsed, then you have no insurance.
Yeah, that's correct.
So you're lucky that he's not suing you.
Albert Lee is accusing pilot instructor Ed Meyer of hitting a cone and damaging his plane. Ed says Albert was already paid by his insurance company.
Okay. Mr. Williams, you were the one who recommended
That's
Mr.
correct,
Meyer.
we did.
Don't you do a check to find out if they have their own insurance before you recommend someone?
He had insurance, but it was lapsed.
Well, that he didn't have insurance. I get that all the time. If you have insurance that's lapsed, then you have no insurance.
Yeah. As a flight school, our instructors are required to carry the insurance.
Okay, but that didn't happen here.
That's correct.
So you're lucky that he's not suing you, because you managed the plane for him. And you recommended him, Mr. Williams, you know. But you have a management company that manages your plane. They're supposed to make certain that if you have a certain kind of plane, that you have pilots certified to fly those kinds of planes. And if they give me a list of pilots, and those pilots aren't certified to fly the kind of plane that I might have, then it's the fault of the management company.
In this case here, the plaintiff and the defendant were working together as far as their payment and the fees they were going to charge.
That's okay. They may have been working head to head. I mean, it was Mr. Meyer's fault, but I'm just telling you that Mr. Lee relies on your advice. What business are you in, Mr. Lee?
I do commercial real estate. I sell shopping centers and office buildings.
Okay. That's not his business. That's why he hires you. And if he hires you, he asks you for recommendations as to where to get the plane repaired for an instructor. Now, the fact that he may pay him independently, he's relied on you for information. So I suggest, Mr. Williams, that you tighten up your ship a little bit. Mr. Meyer, you're responsible to the plaintiff for the damage that you caused his plane. Why did you let your insurance lapse?
It had lapsed. I just didn't even realize the fact that it had lapsed. I just realized the fact that when this came about, that's what happened.
Well, when was the last time you paid premiums?
Probably about a year before that.
Anything else you want to tell me, Mr. Meyer? You owe him $10,000. You caused the damage. You have to fix it. Judgment for the plaintiff. We're finished. Thank you.
This court is adjourned.
I understand her point, the fact that what she saw.
I thought she's very fair.
These cones are made out of plastic.
It's hard to believe. It sounds like a gunshot, and he hit the cone and triggered several warnings. And for him to say he had no idea, it's a little bit hard to believe.
They don't have much weight to them.
With the loud bang after you hit it, it's quite obvious that you should have stopped and shut down and inspect the damage.
There normally is never a cone at the 12 o'clock position. They're at the left side and the right side.
They place cones all the way around the aircraft, and it's part of your responsibility as a pilot in command to do a walk around pre-flight, make sure there's no object in front of your aircraft.
When I taxied out halfway down, that's when I recognized there was an ICAS message that came on.
I finally got it back, and no more student pilots won't let any CFIs fly for a while.
You know what I thought about in this case, Sarah? That lay people have to look at something, lay people, and while I'm a judge and have certain expertise, I have no expertise in reading slips that show what's been done on a car or an airplane or a train or a boat.
But we have common sense.
But we have common sense. And your brakes are not part of an engine. You know, you have an engine job, and then you have a brake job, and you have a
I saw where you were going.
different kind. And, you know, if you have an accident that impacts on the right driver's door, if you put in a new wheel casing in the left rear door, well, that has nothing to do with an accident.
Probably just an oversight. He did state that those two items were not part of, you know.
He did.
He did at the end, but it just feels a little uneasy when they try and slip those things in there, that just common sense doesn't ring true, that it comes from the stands.
Yeah, you know, front, back, you know, the head of a horse, the tail of a horse, it doesn't fit in. And there's really no difference between not having insurance when you're driving a car and not having insurance as a flight instructor. Yeah, that's pretty serious.
I would think there would be a more rigorous check on that before you get behind an aircraft, the wheel of an aircraft.
Absolutely. You would think that there would be. Yeah. There's a flaw in the system someplace. Okay, I'm glad nobody was hurt.
Yeah.
Want justice? Go to judyjustice.tv. Michael Attar is suing his former clients, Mary and Michael Rhodes, for unpaid demolition work.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, please.
Hello, Judge. Case 2115, Attar versus Rhodes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Attar, you were hired to do some, according to you, demolition work and other work at a property owned by Mr. and Mrs. Rhodes. You gave them an estimate for that work. I think the estimate was $11,500. Is that correct?
Correct.
And it was outlined what work you were supposed to do. You started that work, and according to you, at some point there was disagreement with either or both of the Rhodeses, and they stopped payment on a check that they gave you.
Correct.
And the check that they gave you was for $4,200. And then you stopped work for them.
Yes, ma'am, we're finished.
So you're suing them for the canceled check and for other unpaid work that you did that you didn't get paid for.
Correct.
Mr. and Mrs. Rhodes say that they were not satisfied with the quality of your work. It cost them $9,000 to both replace things that were stolen from their property by either you or members of your team, something which I don't think that you question, that somebody from your team, not you, somebody from your team may have taken metal property of theirs that they didn't own. So let's go back. Mr. and Mrs. Rhodes, is this a new property to you, or is this a property that you owned for a while?
It's a new property to us.
That's what I thought. Yeah. So is it a private house?
Yes, and we were remodeling it.
Okay, when did you purchase it?
We purchased in January of 2021.
Is it a single-family residence?
Yes.
How much did you pay for it?
$769,000.
Describe the property to me.
It's in northern Altaloma or Rancho Cucamonga. It's an acre property, has 2 levels on it, and a single-family ranch-style home on it right now. And what we asked him to do was demolition the lower half.
Do you have a photograph?
I do.
I'd like to look at the photograph of what you wanted him to do.
That's what the lower half looked like before.
So this whole portion you wanted him
correct
to demolish and remove the debris.
And grade flat.
Is that correct, sir?
I can't see from here, ma'am.
Okay. We're going to show it to you. To demolish it, flatten it, fill it in.
Remove all the debris. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. And did you have a written contract?
We did not.
Well, that's always a mistake.
Always.
How did you find him?
I believe I got his business card. It was on my personal car, I think at Home Depot. We had bought this house, and we tried to find somebody to do the work, but...
Mr. Rhodes, let me tell you that the best way to find somebody is not somebody who leaves a card on your car at Home Depot. or any place else.
It was a difficult time to find contractors with COVID and everything at that time.
And at the time, I'm also going to add, because I read in the paper somewhere at the time, he didn't have a license.
He did not.
And you knew he didn't have a license.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I told him, Your Honor. I do not
Just a
have
second.
license.
They didn't say no, we didn't know. They said we knew. So you got somebody who had no license to do what you wanted him to do, and you got his number from a card that he left on your windshield. Did you ask for references? That's either a yes or a no.
No, and I'm not really sure actually 100% on where I found that card. I think
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean,
But he did tell us he was in the process of getting his license, that it was coming.
Yeah. I know.
What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. You're two intelligent people. Okay. So you hired an unlicensed contractor to do work on your house and agreed to pay him $11,500. Now, Mr. Rattar, the $11,000 included labor and materials. Is that correct?
There was no material. It was labor and bins.
Well, that's material, labor and bins to remove
Yes, ma'am.
all the equipment that you needed
Yes, ma'am.
to complete the job.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that correct?
Of before, too, of what I was supposed to do, and I took a picture.
Well, no, I have that.
You have the wrong picture, Your Honor.
Okay, I'd like to see the picture that he has.
I was supposed to do from the post all the way to the other post, remove everything, and the pool and the deck.
Mr. Rattar, the $11,500 was an all-inclusive figure.
Yes, Your Honor.
One of the things that became an issue is a bobcat.
Correct.
From what I'm piecing together, you hired somebody in a bobcat to do a bobcat. That's a big piece of equipment that knocks down something.
I rented a bobcat.
And somebody who operated it.
My worker.
You didn't know how to operate the bobcat.
I know how to operate bobcat, but I was controlling the demolition site, ma'am. I was like many things
Just a
was going at the
second.
same time. I had to control everything.
Mr. Rattar, something happened with the bobcat, the original one that you got. What happened with it?
It broke down on us.
No, it didn't break down on them. It broke down on you.
On us.
It broke down on you.
Yes.
So what did you do?
I took it back, and next day supposed to deliver me another one, but they sent me a drunk driver and another broken down bobcat. I returned it. At that moment, I asked Mrs. Rhodes, can you please go down Home Depot, which is like a mile away, so we don't stop wasting time, rent a bobcat or not.
Just a second. Why should she rent a bobcat, sir? Your $11,500 included the bobcat.
But I paid for it.
No. If you're going to pay for it, that's one thing. Then what are you sending her for? If your $11,500 figure included all materials, then she doesn't have to rent a bobcat. If you rented one that didn't work, rent one that works. How much of a down payment did they give you?
Presume was $4,000.
When did you start the job?
I started the job on 15th of January.
When did you leave the job?
I was asked to leave on the 2nd of February.
On February 2nd?
Yes, ma'am. Not to go back, I'll call the cops on you.
Between January 15th and February 2nd, other than the $4,000, did they give you any other money?
Yes, Your Honor, they did.
How much money did they give you?
They gave me up to $7,000.
So they gave you an additional $3,000?
Yes, and $1,000 check.
Your Honor, that was within the first week we gave him.
It doesn't matter to me. My question was between January 15th and February 2nd, they gave you $7,000.
Correct.
Explain the other $4,200, which is the check that they stopped payment on.
Okay. I'll happily explain to you. The bobcat she rented for me on her behalf, it cost $329 to rent per day. And I rented for one day only, but they charged me $800.
No, that's not correct.
Just a second. I didn't ask you anything.
Okay.
Do you have a photograph of what the property looked like when you left?
Yes, ma'am. The last picture I took before I was kicked out of the property.
You're talking, I'm not listening to you.
Michael Attar claims his former clients, Mary and Michael Rhodes, owe for unpaid demolition work. Mary and Michael are countersuing for lost wages, equipment rental, and missing property.
Now, they paid you $7,000.
Correct.
They wrote you another check.
The final check was supposed to be $5,000, but they only gave me $4,200 because they mined $800 for the bobcat rental.
Just a second. First of all, the total bill wasn't 7 and 5. 7 and 5, even my rudimentary math, is $12,000. That would be $500 more than your agreed contract, which was for 11.5.
They gave me $6,500 because they gave me small checks. They gave me the first initial
Just a
check,
second.
and they gave me smaller ones.
Sir, you're the businessman, whether you have a license or not. I asked you before how much money did they give you between January 15th and February 2nd, and you said $7,000.
I didn't write it down, Your Honor.
Well, you're here asking for money, and you have to write it down. You have to have
work
some.
I've done performed already. And
No, sir.
And I just did the job, Your Honor. I did 7, 8 other side jobs for them.
I don't care whether you did 7 or 8 side jobs. Your original agreement with them was for $11,500, including all material. Now, what you said to me was that they gave you $7,000, and you said they're supposed to give me another 5. Well, another 5 is more than your quote.
Ma'am, the balance was 5.
How?
The initial check, then they gave me $1,000.
How much money did you give them altogether that he cashed?
$7,000.
Then they owed you $4,500 pursuant to your agreement.
We agreed to $11,000, not $11,500.
$11,500, Your Honor.
Anybody have any proof of what the agreed amount was?
We had a verbal contract with me, Mr. Rhodes.
Fine. I will indicate that it's $11,500. If they gave you 7, they don't owe you 5. They owed you the difference between $11,500 and the 7 that they gave you. Now, one of the things that you disputed, Mr. Attar, was this Bobcat. Who paid for the Bobcat? Show me.
They minus it from the final price.
Just a second. Was that an argument?
The argument about it is, Your Honor, is they rented for 1 day, but they charged me 2 days, $800. There's no Bobcat rental for $800 for 2 days. I got.
Do you have the bill for the Bobcat?
I do, yes. And it was for 2 days.
Go over a certain time.
Because it was returned late. So they charged a second day. But in his text messages, he did request it for 2 days.
Is that the total price?
Yes, and I did not subtract it from his payment.
Total contract was $652.74?
Yes.
Do you have a photograph of what the property looked like when you left?
Yes, ma'am. The last picture I took before I was kicked out of the property.
You're talking, I'm not listening to you. Just show me a picture.
Yes, ma'am. This is not a picture.
Mr. Attar, you're the businessman.
Yes, ma'am.
This is your company.
Yes, ma'am.
Company requires, A, a license before you operate, which you didn't have.
If you do.
B, it requires a written contract. You're the businessman. They're people who bought a house who got your number off a windshield someplace. You're the businessman, and you want the parameters. You want them fixed. So I don't know if it's 11,000 or 11,500. Do you understand?
Very much, Your Honor.
Right. Well, that's your mistake. You look as if you've probably been in business for a long time.
14 years.
And is what you're telling me you don't have written contracts?
All my contracts are verbal.
Then how many times have you been in court, sir?
Never.
Never.
I've never had a stop payment check. Never pays me on time, Your Honor.
It's the problem. So when you finished, the debris wasn't all removed.
That wood, they kept telling me, don't touch it. Their neighbor, cousin, whoever's going to come pick it up. That was just cut cord wood.
No. There's brick, there's wood, there's cement.
We cleaned all that. I personally cleaned all that.
Just a second. What I asked you, Mr. Attar, was show me a picture of the property when you left. This is the picture that you showed me.
That was the last, before I had more work, I came in and did more. I wasn't taking pictures. I wasn't expecting somebody to stop payment on a check, Your Honor. I was not expecting that.
What it looked like when he left.
What about after?
Well, what are you showing me here? This brick that's here?
They piled it there and then left it there.
Well, that's probably a good one.
No, it was supposed to be removed.
So this is the back.
That's the picture of the sagging patio because he removed part of the supports that were holding up the patio that he wasn't supposed to. So it's now sagging.
Now, this is the picture that you gave me when you told me this is what you wanted, level, cleared, and made flat.
Right.
Now, I want to see your picture of what this looked like when he left.
You have it. It's in some of those photos.
Flat's leveled.
You're talking about this?
Yeah.
That's part of it. The close-ups, that's part of it.
Well, it looks like most of the stuff is done. It looked like a lot of cleanup left.
No, ma'am. We've done all the cleanup.
Well, I haven't seen that, so then what you're supposed to do is take a photograph.
We were taking pictures
it was also buried underneath. These are the photos of when we did it ourselves and really leveled it out. And as we were doing that, we found so much buried underneath that should have been removed, but his Bobcat person buried it all.
Your Honor.
Mean buried
all the debris, all the concrete brick.
Okay,
and
let me see the bill from the...
No, we did it ourselves. We rented equipment and did it ourselves on his vacation.
Oh, nice. Okay. $4,500 is so far what's owed on this contract. Now, your counterclaim is money owed for lost work, equipment rentals, labor and missing damages to property. What money owed for lost work?
During the second week that he was working, he called and said that his crew had left. This was the second day of supposed to be use of the Bobcat that I rented.
Okay, if you interrupt me again, I'm just dismissing your case. Do you understand?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good.
So
just explain lost work. Who's lost work?
His.
Oh, forget it.
Well, he called and said his crew left.
Forget it.
He can't finish the job.
You weren't living there.
Not yet, no.
You weren't living there. Okay. He wants to go. I'm not interested in his lost wages for taking care of his house. So far, you owe the man the balance on his contract, unless you had somebody else do it, which is absolutely fine. And I would look at that removal of debris, what it costs you, and you're absolutely entitled to that. Deducted from what you owe him, which is $4,500.
But he didn't finish the job.
Just a second. You tell me, how am I supposed to gauge how much of the job he didn't finish? Did he not complete $2,500 worth? $3,500 worth? $1,500 worth?
I think the $7,000 we paid him was overpaid. He didn't have to end up removing an entire pool. He only had to remove...
That's your problem. Just a second. I read that. You said it's not a big pool. It wasn't 8 feet. It was only 24 inches. He gave you a price to level everything. Nothing delineated, nothing in a written contract. The pool turns out to be 2 feet instead of 6 feet, or 2 feet instead of 8 feet. Well, if he was the contractor and he came out and he looked at the pool, he said, oh, this is an 8-foot pool, and it turned out it's a 12-foot pool, he'd be stuck with 11.5, just like you're stuck with 11.5 because it was shallower. Now, you owe him $4,500 unless you want to produce for me bills that you have for rental equipment, et cetera, and I will absolutely deduct that from the $4,500. Just give me the bills and the amount of equipment. Don't say nothing, Mr. Retard. Mr. Rhodes, did you rent a Bobcat?
The one that I cleaned up the yard with?
Yes.
I rented a piece of equipment.
Jump up!
Yes.
And you know how they pick up metal?
No, I don't know that, sir. I'm a television personality. I don't know about people driving down the street to pick up metal. I've never had somebody drive down the street and say, I'm looking for metal. They don't even come down my street and ask if I want sharp knives.
Michael Attar has accused his former clients, Mary and Michael Rhodes, of refusing to pay for demolition work. Mary and Michael claim he never finished the job and stole their property.
Now, what did you rent?
A skip loader.
That's different from a Bobcat.
Yes, that's correct.
Smaller?
I would say bigger.
Bigger. And do you remember how much it cost you? Did you rent it from Home Depot?
No. It's from a local rental yard. I think it was
all the equipment we rented
in Ontario.
$1,300.
Yeah.
Find it.
Yeah.
Find the bill.
They didn't print it, so now I gotta.
How many days did you have it, Mr. Rhodes?
4.
I'm dismissing your counterclaim, Mrs. Rhodes. Do you want to know why? Because I asked him a specific question, and you answered. Do you understand? Do you understand? That part of your counterclaim, because you don't have it, you can't find it. So far you owe him $4,500. Not $8,600, but $4,500. Now, do you have any proof that Mr. Attar or someone from his team stole copper piping or whatever piping that you claim was missing? Do you have any proof that either Mr. Attar or anyone under his authority took property from you?
Yes. We have text messages back and forth.
Okay, I'll read them. Okay, so what you're referring to with regard to the stolen property is you send a picture and there's a little piece of pipe there, one piece of pipe, and you say, Mike, did you or your guys happen to grind off 2 metal poles and concrete blocks? The kids use those for volleyball nets. And he says, oh my God, no, sir, but I'm guessing the person whom I gave my medal to, no problem, Michael, please give, and I don't see the rest of this message.
Yes, so that was the beginning of things we noticed that were missing.
Oh, I don't care.
And
If
then,
this is what you're talking about?
Yes, he's saying he let a metal person onto our yard, and they went and took everything that was metal.
Okay. Okay, now, Mr. Attar.
Yes, Your Honor.
I want you to tell me about the missing metal on this property.
She was standing right there, and there was a metal guy that drives down the street. And you know how they pick up metal?
No, I don't know that, sir. I'm a television personality. I don't know about people driving down the street to pick up metal. I've never had somebody drive down the street and say, I'm looking for metal. They don't even come down my street and ask if I want sharp knives.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Very much, Your Honor.
Do you understand?
Very much, Your Honor.
Okay. Who is this person?
This person was picking up metal, and I asked for permission. I said, ma'am, could you come down the property?
Just a second.
Yes, ma'am.
Was this person picking up metal for nothing?
Yes,
Just a second. Yeah. You're a business guy. Mr. Attar, somebody drives down the street and says, you know, I see you doing construction. Is there any metal around here that you want me to dispose of?
Yes, ma'am. They do a lot.
Yes. And then they look around. This is what you tell them. They look around and they take the metal for nothing.
Yes, ma'am. This would be cheaper for me instead of load it on my trailer and take it to the recycling metal yard.
So what metal did they take, sir? I assume
everything that I gave them.
What did you give them?
Nobody went up there and cut no poles, ma'am.
Well, they sent you a picture of a pole, sir, and in response to the picture of the pole, you said, oh, my God, I'm guessing the person whom I gave my medal to.
I'm guessing.
No problem. And then you say later, tell me what it is, and I will either look high and low to get it back or replace it. That's what you say.
Yes, I offered to replace it.
That's what you say.
I offered to replace it.
Now, next question. I need an itemized list and what the value was of the metal taken.
No, there's a list of everything. They're listed in there.
What is this?
Those are all the damages, but the metal is listed in there separately of the items that are missing.
No, it isn't. This is a whole bunch of other things that you prepared for this case.
It's in there underneath. There's the horse feeder. Part of the corral was cut off.
This is something that you wrote yourself.
Yes, you said an itemized list.
If they took 6 feet of pipe, get me a bill from Home Depot for the replacement of that pipe.
Oh, I have
all the bills for the replacement of metal, not what you prepared for this litigation.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Itemized list.
Did you take down a horse corral?
No, Your Honor, I did not take no horse corral. I have nothing
Horse corral, is that metal or is it?
It's made out of galvanized metal, yeah. They cut pieces off of that were sticking up to take to recycle, I guess.
Just a second. Was there a 4-sided horse corral?
Yes.
That looked like this?
Yes.
That they took down?
They cut pieces that were sticking up above the horse corral, attached to the horse corral.
You're being petty. You're being petty. $306, Ram's price, galvanized wall-mounted horse feeder. Did you take a horse feeder?
No, Your Honor, I got no.
Yo, Mr. Attar, $4,500. Judgment for the plaintiff. Counterclaims dismissed. We're finished.
This court is adjourned.
Well, his equipment broke, and he wanted us to rent the equipment for him.
Equipment died because things break down.
And then the next day, he calls and says he can't finish it.
At that moment, I didn't have a credit card to my name. And that's the honest truth.
So we pretty much figured that was job abandonment at that point.
I'm going to have a written contract in the future. Don't hire
Always
him.
hire a professional.
I could not believe that your first question to him when he said that he'd been working as a contractor for 14 years was, and you've been working all 14 of those years unlicensed?
Oh, yeah.
I was waiting for the question. I was waiting at the edge of my seat, and it never came.
Different minds. Yeah. Should have slipped me a note.
I should have.
You should have slipped me a note. No, that actually didn't cross my mind, but that's a good question.
Yeah, oral contracts and no license.
And no license, but there's no question. He did the work.
Yeah, no, I agree.
He did the work, and they were really dickering over who was going to absorb the cost of this second Bobcat that they had to get, which was really ridiculous. If they had another contractor who came and completed the job.
You would have awarded that.
I would have deducted it from the $4,500 that they owed him. But absent that, the fact that he rented some sort of piece of equipment and came and cleaned up the property was not important to me, and the rest of their case was nonsense. Next time, they won't employ somebody for $11,000 from a card from your windshield.
At Home Depot.
From
Anywhere.
wherever, and not say, okay, listen, maybe I give him a shot. Give me 3 of your last references to call.
It's a good lesson to people out there,
I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Morgan Larson is suing defendant Chris Bumgardner for vandalism after his 16-year-old son damaged her car.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, everyone.
Hello, Judge. Case 2101, Lawson versus Bumgardner.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Miss Larson, it is your claim that the defendant's son, I assume that's this young man over here, vandalized your car. And he vandalized your car by smashing in a side mirror.
Yes, ma'am.
Which required you to be without a car for a day while they fixed it. So you want his father, who was actually present at the time, to pay for the damage.
Yes, ma'am.
From what I gather, this happened on Father's Day, which was June 19th of this year, and you were going over to visit your father.
Yes.
For Father's Day. Stand up. What I gather from your complaint, was he sleeping?
Yes, he was.
Okay. Some sort of an altercation happened, which you'll tell me about in a moment. His father was called.
Yes, ma'am.
His father came. This kerfuffle continued, and when they were on their way out, this young man, whose name is?
Caden Bumgardner.
Caden.
Caden.
Caden smashed in your passenger mirror, and his father says, well, he actually saw him do that, but it was just pushing in the window, the mirror, and really all you had to do was pull it out, and it would have been fine.
Right.
That's your defense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let's start out when you arrived at your father's house. What time?
I arrived at my father's about, I would say, about 11:15.
Okay. What happened?
And it woke up Caden in the process. Caden got upset.
What did he say? How did you know he was upset?
He started screaming and pretty much saying, why the heck are you coming in here, waking everybody up? You have no right to.
Okay.
And then after that, Caden got up and started yelling, started punching the walls, screaming. My father went in there, and then his father, Chris, ended up getting called to come get Caden.
How far do you live from where Miss Larson's father lives?
About 7 miles away.
How old is your son?
He's 16.
Is he the oldest one of your children, in the middle?
The youngest.
Any other children at home other than him?
No, ma'am.
So he's the baby and he's home?
Yes.
Who sets the rules for him?
Well, I do.
Where did you think he was going?
No, I knew he was over they had something to do for Mother's Day, and then they had
That was
another-
Father's Day.
Well, I know, but I'm saying for the entire
Mother's Day is in May, Father's Day is in June.
But they
usually don't have carryovers.
something planned, I don't know. But anyhow, yeah, he was over there.
Times have changed, life has changed. The only time you got to sleep outside your house when I was growing up was when you were outside in a pine box or a white dress. That was it. Those were your choices.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the way you could leave your parents' house, right? I chose the dress. All right. Now, Caden, I'm going to come around to you because, we're not talking about somebody losing 2 pints of blood or somebody losing a finger.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to wake up a teenager at 11:30 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually ready for dinner at 11:30 in the morning. But teenagers, they're still growing, so they sleep late. But you were particularly annoyed when Miss Larson came in, right?
Yes.
Why?
Well, she did put it the right way, but she didn't put it the right way because.
But just tell me why.
Well,
Don't look at her. Talk to me.
She didn't just wake her up. She came in there loud.
When she walked in, Caden, to a room in her father's house, what did she say? And tell me in what tone of voice she said it.
She said in a excited voice, but not like a mad voice, excited voice.
All right, and that got you mad.
No, that's not what got me mad.
What got you mad?
By the time I could even finish my sentence, she's already busted in through the door and was in my face saying, you got something to say to me.
Just a second. You're not following me. She came in, and the first thing you said was she was talking too loud, and I want to know what you said to her.
I didn't say nothing to her.
Nothing.
Nothing. I didn't even
Nothing.
look at her.
And then she left. So
She cussed at me, but then she walked in there and she later
who
said...
cussed at you?
Her. And then she later said
Well,
that
just
she
a
was
second. I didn't get to that part, that she cussed at you. If you didn't say anything to her, what would she cuss at you?
Because she got a phone call from her saying that she wants me to get ran out of the house. That's how this all started.
Just a second. Oh, that's a different story. Okay, so what you're saying to me is you believe that she came over for the purpose of getting you out of the house.
I believe so, yes. Because that's what I got told.
Well, let us assume for a moment that's true. That would sound right to me. Get him out of the house. It's 11:30 in the morning on Father's Day. We want to have a party here. Get him out of the house. That would sound right on the money to moi. Right on the money. I mean, if that's what it was about. So I don't care if that's what it was about or not. Okay. Your father comes. What happened when you got there, sir?
When I showed up, I went to the door, I knocked on it, they answered the door. It was pretty chaotic.
Look at me.
It was pretty chaotic.
Describe what chaotic is.
Okay, there was a bunch of yelling and screaming going on between Caden, my son, and the plaintiff.
And Miss Larson.
Miss Larson, yes. And I told my son, I said, hey, you just need to step outside and let me figure out what's going on here, and I'll be right out. I tried to talk to Mark. Mark come out of the room.
Who's Mark?
That's the father. He was being very disrespectful, he said, and he said he wanted him to leave. I said, okay, that's no problem. I'll get him
Just
out
a
of here.
second. The father came out of the room and said, I want Caden to leave.
Right.
And did he leave?
When I come and got him, we left. Yes, we did.
And he walked out the front door.
Yes, he did.
And when he walked out the front door, he passed the plaintiff's car.
Yes, I believe so.
What do you mean? You wrote it in your answer, sir.
Yes, I
so
did.
the answer
Yes,
is
I did.
yes.
Yes.
And you saw him do what to the mirror? Don't minimize what he did. I would have slapped him upside the head if I saw him take his hand and knock off somebody's mirror. I really didn't mean that. I don't believe in corporal punishment.
Amen.
And later today.
What do you think that I think of a person who says, okay, I'll go with you to this very, very sad time? Someone who I've been close and intimate with for months, but it's going to cost you $900.
Morgan Larson claims Chris Bumgardner's 16-year-old son, Caden, vandalized her car.
Now, you saw him do what to the mirror?
Push it in.
Okay, very good. Now, do you have photographs of the pushed-in mirror?
I do.
I'd like to see it.
Okay, one moment.
Just for my own curiosity, you knew that it was wrong for him to touch that mirror.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and if what you say is he just pushed the mirror in and all it had to do is be, you believe, to be clicked out?
I believe to be
just,
clicked out.
Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you say to him, don't touch somebody else's property? That's what this is all about.
Well, I
Your
believe
temper.
I did say that to him.
Just
I
a
said,
second.
Don't put your
Well,
hand.
then why didn't you pull out the mirror if that's all it was? If you say the only thing
because
wrong
she
with the
was
mirror is
coming
that it has to be pulled out, why didn't you do that? You didn't see him touch the mirror.
No, I did not.
You were there.
She was right behind us.
She didn't see it. You saw it. So my only question to you is, if you saw it and it was that minor thing, and you know what it is, either you can click the mirror in and then you pull it out. I'm always afraid to click it out that I'm going to break it.
Exactly.
You're not suggesting that anybody else touched this mirror to damage it. No. Okay, let's see. What did he use on the mirror, sir? What did he use to hit the mirror?
I believe it was his hand.
When you say you believe it was his hand, did you see what was in his hand?
He had nothing in his hand.
Did his hand get bloody?
No.
Okay, Kevin, would you turn these over to the defendant, please, and get from the plaintiff an estimate for the damage?
That's not what...
Well, they ripped it off there.
Well, yeah, clearly, because that's not what it looked like when I seen. Because when he walked by, he just simply... Okay. And I said, now, Caden, that's enough.
So you had a $500 deductible on your insurance?
Yes, I did.
And you had it fixed?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And you paid $442.74. Good. How long did it take them to fix it?
I would say about a month with the parts being on back order. And
but you had the use of the car all that time?
No.
Oh, of course you did. Okay. Just want to see what you have for a car rental.
Your Honor, I don't understand this car rental part of it. I've been without a mirror before.
Sir, you're not allowed to drive without two mirrors.
Then there was one in the cab as well. That's two mirrors, isn't it?
I don't know what you're asking me, sir, because at some point you just have to take the car, and let's say it takes a day once you get the parts. At some point you have to take the car in and you're without a car for a day. Well, then you can either be without a car for a day or you can rent a car for a day. I'm not giving her a rental for a month. I'm not crazy. You know, there's a certain amount of inconvenience that one endures when somebody else vandalizes a piece of their property. And that's part of the punishment.
Well, I understand.
Yeah, I'm glad you understand. Don't minimize what he did. I would have slapped him upside the head if I saw him take his hand and knock off somebody's mirror. I really didn't mean that. I don't believe in corporal punishment.
Amen.
I don't think you needed 15 days to fix this.
I didn't think so either.
Well, I certainly don't think so. But you're entitled to a day's car rent. So I put that down as $200, including everything, $642.74. Judgment for the plaintiff. Thank you very much.
This court is adjourned.
I didn't think that I needed to pay the whole $1,300 out of pocket.
I'm just glad someone finally held them accountable for what they did.
The mirror, I was walking past it and just hit it. Bam, you know what I mean?
I finally am getting reimbursed for the money I had to pay.
I knew what I was doing, and when I did it, I did regret it after I did it, you know what I mean?
I feel like some people need to control their children better.
It's also a sign of the times that this father did not own up to what he saw.
I will say he was on the more responsible side of parents than some that we've seen here. He said, I said, Caden, what are you doing? This is not how you act. This is not how you behave. So that I almost appreciated. But he didn't take it as far as you or I would have liked.
As far as knock at the door. I know this is hot. My son did something wrong. I'm going to pay for it.
Yep.
Whatever it is. I have to come into the 21st century kicking and screaming.
I'll try and help you as much as I can.
Hello mọi người, chào mừng mọi người đã đến với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì chúng ta sẽ cùng nhau tô màu cho bức tranh về cô gái này nha. Bây giờ thì mình sẽ tô màu cho mái tóc trước tiên nhé. Trước vẽ thì mình sẽ chọn tô màu xanh dương nhé. giờ mình sẽ tô màu cho cái rèm nhá, rèm cửa. Mình đã tô màu xong cho bức tranh và đây chính là thành quả của mình. Mình cảm ơn các bạn đã cùng mình theo dõi. Hãy like, share và subscribe để ủng hộ mình ở những video tiếp theo.